Warrior Lore. Chapter 32-25. Oh. Louis stared blankly, then immediately understood. He hurriedly said carefully, "Good. Immortal Master knows that this little one has used all the silver on me to treat Xiao Yun's illness. I didn't leave any behind. Junior has some here." Hearing this, Xiao Jian took out a few pieces of silver and handed them to Louis. "Brother Liu, I'll have to trouble you to find a slightly bigger carriage." Yes, Louis took the silver and quickly ran towards the town. Although the people of Longevity Town would definitely be very flustered after surviving a calamity, with Louis's intelligence, Xiao Hua didn't feel that this would be difficult. "Senior, let's go and wait." Xiao Jian seemed to be unwilling to stay in Jiangshao Ridge for a moment longer, and said to Xiao Hua very respectfully and anxiously. Xiao Hua didn't reply, and slowly walked along the main road. Xiao Jian followed beside him, while Yuanya drooped his head and weakly followed behind the two. After silently walking for half a cup of tea's time, seeing that there were still many people walking towards Jiangchao Monastery, Xiao Jian couldn't help but spit on the ground and fiercely said, "Damn it, I've worked so hard in Jiangchao Monastery for so many years, but I've been biased towards this group of bald donkeys. Just treat it as a gift from me to my son." Then, Xiao Jian saw that Xiao Hua was calmly walking in front without any trace of anger. He quickly walked a few steps and said with a smile, "Senior, you're my Taoist senior. Naturally, you wouldn't care about this. However, Junior has been here for many years and has already treated this place as my home. Now that I'm suddenly leaving, I'm really reluctant." Hee, fighting with the heavens and earth isn't as fun as fighting with the monks of Shaojin Temple. Xiao Hua knew that Xiao Jian wanted to talk to him, so he simply opened his mouth and mocked him. Hearing this, Xiao Jian unconsciously rubbed his head and said embarrassedly, "Senior is right. I've fought with these bald donkeys for so many years. I'm indeed reluctant." Hearing this, Xiao Hua didn't reply. He understood what Xiao Jian was thinking, and wanted to see how Xiao Jian would open his mouth. "Senior." After a moment of silence, Xiao Jian said again, "May I know where Senior is going after leaving Longevity Town?" "The Buddhist sect's paradise." Xiao Hua looked into the distance and said indifferently, "What? Senior? Senior wants to go to the nest of those bald donkeys?" Xiao Jian's face turned pale with fright as he hurriedly said, "I heard that the Pure Land is filled with baldies. You are a senior of my Taoist sect, an enemy of the Buddhist sect. If you go there, will you still be alive? Of course, this junior is not doubting your cultivation. It's just that 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Do you know where Elysium is?" Xiao Hua turned his head and asked Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian shook his head honestly and said, "Junior only knows that the Western Paradise is in the south. When we reach the border of the hidden immortal continent, we just have to cross the eastern and southern seas to reach there. However, as far as I know, the distance from the Longevity Town to the eastern sea is hundreds of thousands of miles. The eastern sea and the southern sea are millions of miles wide. There are many demon beasts in the sea, and they are 100 times more powerful than the water clan we saw today. Senior, if you want to reach the ultimate land of bliss, it will be very difficult." Sigh, that's right. When Xiao Hua heard this, he nodded inwardly. Xiao Jian was right. If he didn't recover his cultivation, it would be impossible for him to head to the Western Paradise with his current strength. Right now, the most important thing for Jihao to do was to purify all the earth crystal Yao milk in his body. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's eyes brightened as if he thought of something. He turned his head and asked Xiao Jian, "Taoist Xiao, where do you want to go?" "Actually," Xiao Jian clenched his teeth. He turned his head and looked at Yuanya, who seemed to be thinking about something, and said, "I won't hide it from Senior. What you said before was extremely right. Junior doesn't have the power to protect himself. Back then, I saved Yuanya so that he could protect me. However, after being with Yuanya for so many years, Junior has long regarded Yuanya as my own nephew. Junior doesn't have any ability. If he wants to follow Senior to cultivate, Junior is also extremely willing. However, Senior also said that if Senior goes east, Junior goes west. Yuanya doesn't know how to choose. However, if Senior goes east and Junior also goes east, doesn't that mean Yuanya doesn't have to choose?" Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He shook his head and said, "I can go to the ultimate land of bliss. Can you go too?" Yes, Junior naturally can't go, Xiao Jian said respectfully. However, if Senior goes to the hidden immortal continent and Junior follows Senior, won't Yuanya also be able to ask Senior for advice? Since Senior can take Lu Gu as a servant, why can't you take Yuanya as a servant? Although Lu Gu is clever, he doesn't have a good background after all. He thinks too much in his heart. He can't be compared to Ya's simplicity and seriousness. Xiao Jian, Xiao Hua smiled. Actually, you don't have to go east. You just need to let Yuanya follow me. Why go through so much trouble? Hee. Xiao Jian smiled and said, following Senior, not only will I have Yuanya's protection, I will also have Senior's grace. If Junior doesn't follow Senior, then I would be crazy. Hee. Xiao Hua's mouth twitched. He actually became this guy's bodyguard. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and asked, "Oh right, Xiao Jian, do you still remember Lu Town that I asked you about this morning?" Lu Town? Xiao Jian was slightly stunned and immediately nodded. Yes, Junior remembers. Could it be? Senior wants to go to Lu Town? That's right. Xiao Hua nodded. Others don't know about my origin, but you and Yuanya are very clear about it. How about this? Yuanya. Yes. Just when he heard Xiao Jian say that he wanted to follow Xiao Hua, Yuanya's eyes lit up as if he was alive. Now that he heard Xiao Hua's call, he hurriedly answered. If you help me find Lu Town, I can consider teaching you some spells. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Hearing this, Yuanya was really ecstatic. Almost without thinking, he knelt on the ground and shouted, Disciple understands. Disciple will definitely help Master find Lu Town. When did I say that I want to accept you as my disciple? Xiao Hua smiled and said, I just want to teach you some spells. A teacher for a day is a father for life. Yuanya said excitedly, this is the first sentence that Master taught Disciple. Disciple has not dared to forget it for so many years. A teacher for a day is a father for life. Alas, Xiao Hua's heart was suddenly touched. In his mind, he instantly thought of the words he said before his death in order to use the blood curse to entangle Shan Shengzi and Daoist Du. Disciple. Disciple said, wrong? Seeing Xiao Hua's gloomy expression, Yuanya's heart suddenly tightened, and he hurriedly asked, No. Xiao Hua's expression was very amiable. He looked at Xiao Jian and said to Yuanya, Tell me, how are you going to help me find Lu Town? This. Yuanya's face turned red. If he had to fight and kill someone, it would be an easy matter. But to find Lu Town, he really didn't know how to do it. Xiao Jian looked at Yuanya's embarrassed expression and smiled. After a moment, he smiled and said to Yuanya, Yeah, in fact, this matter is very easy. You only need to buy a map of the hidden immortal continent. Of course, this map must be extremely complete. All the towns and villages in the continent must be recorded. As long as you search one state at a time, one country at a time, you will definitely find Lu Town that Senior wants to find. Oh, not to mention Yuanya. Even Xiao Hua was stunned. Xiao Hua had never thought of using a map. Disciple understands. Thank you, Master. Yuanya was overjoyed. He turned to Xiao Hua and said, Disciple will help Master find the map first. All right. This old man's words always count. Xiao Hua smiled. No matter what method you use, it's fine. Thank you, Master. Yuanya almost thought that Xiao Hua was giving him a huge opportunity. Xiao Jian, Xiao Hua asked again, Are you sure that there is a map of the hidden immortal continent? Of course. Xiao Jian smiled and said, When every country was founded, they would draw a map of their territory. Every town and village would be recorded in it. These maps would inevitably be leaked out. When people with intentions took them, they would gather them and naturally form a map of the hidden immortal continent. Not only the hidden immortal continent, but also the Western Paradise and Thousand Demons sacred realm. Senior can rest assured about this. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua secretly nodded. In addition, if Senior really wants to go to the Western Paradise, then you should also find a map of the Western Paradise. Xiao Jian naturally didn't think that Xiao Hua would really go to the Western Paradise, but he still reminded him, Master, the map of the hidden immortal continent. Suddenly, Yuanya realized and shouted, How big is that? How can a piece of paper draw it? Xiao Jian smiled. looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Ordinary people naturally can't, but us Taoists and Confucians have ways to do it. Jade eyes, Buddhist archives, and beast skins can all record a lot of things." Oh? Hearing this, Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised. He had heard Chu Mu Huan mention about the Buddhist archives and beast skins in the Western Ocean, but he had never seen them before. Now it is the hidden immortal continent, and this is a small longevity town. Xiao Jian actually knows about these things. Seems like Xiao Jian's story is really thought-provoking. Suppressing his curiosity, Xiao Hua opened his mouth again and said, "Then where should I find the map of the hidden immortal continent?" Xiao Jian looked at Xiao Hua somewhat strangely, as if he was very puzzled by Xiao Hua not knowing where to find the map. Moreover, he also felt that Xiao Hua didn't seem to know anything about the hidden immortal continent. There's nothing strange about it. Xiao Hua noticed Xiao Jian's gaze and said indifferently, "I was originally a rogue cultivator who lived in seclusion. Later on, I met an enemy and was injured by the enemy's magic treasure, so I hid in the origin stone to hide. Now that I have woken up, I don't know how many years have passed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. There are too many things that I don't know." Yes, this junior knows. This was the first time Xiao Hua told Xiao Jian about his origin. Although it was still vague, seeing that Xiao Jian didn't dare to ask more, he hurriedly replied, "If Senior wants to find the map, the closest place to here is the Copper Pillar State." "Oh, the Copper Pillar State that you and the Cloak Gang's leader talked about that day?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "You have a good idea. Even if I can't find the map, you can still trade your origin stones there, right?" -11. Chapter 32-26. "I've made a fool of myself," Xiao Jian said with a smile. "I didn't know you were looking for a map. These primordial stones are of good quality and can be exchanged for a lot of things in Copper Pillar State. You should know that. I don't have any cultivation, and these primordial stones are useless in my hands. They're even a disaster. I've long wanted to exchange these primordial stones for some elixirs and see if they can restore my cultivation." When he said the last sentence, Xiao Jian really couldn't conceal the probing in his heart. He couldn't help but glance at Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua still had a smile on his face as if he didn't hear his last sentence. Instead, he said, "That's good. Since we're all going to Copper Pillar State, let's go together." "Yes." Xiao Jian was slightly disappointed, but he still said, "Thanks to you, I can safely reach Copper Pillar State." Huh. At this moment, Xiao Hua slightly raised his head and looked at the road behind him. He snorted and ordered Yuanya, "Yuanya, go and pick up Lu Yi. If anyone tries to stop you, don't hold back." "Yes, I understand." Yuanya immediately turned his head and looked into the distance, but there were still a few people on the road. Where was Lu Yi? However, Yuanya still obediently agreed, but his expression was one of excitement, almost as if he was about to jump out of the room. "I'll give this to you." Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the magic wand. "I'll give it to you in the future." "Really?" Yuanya was so happy that he scratched his ears and cheeks. He took the magic wand and rushed into the distance like a galloping horse. "Senior." Xiao Jian's divine sense couldn't go too far, so he asked tentatively, "Did Brother Lu encounter the disciples of the Cloak Gang?" "Humph." Xiao Hua sneered. "Who else could it be? These people are really like ghosts that won't go away. They don't forget to do evil in this time of disaster." When Xiao Jian heard this, he was a little anxious and whispered, "Senior, there's nothing to say about Yu's skills. It's easy for him to deal with a dozen Cloak Gang disciples, but if there are too many people," Xiao Hua said confidently, "don't worry. Yuan Yu's aptitude is good. Since I've already agreed, how can I let him die? Actually, he doesn't need to go." "Oh." Xiao Jian raised his eyebrows and said thoughtfully, "Does Senior want you to get closer to Brother Lu?" This old man indeed has this idea." Xiao Hua smiled. "But the origin of this matter isn't as profound as you think. When this old man instructed Yuanya just now, Lu Yi did not have any help. By the time this old man finished speaking, someone had already gone to help Lu Yi." "Hee, Junior is thinking too much. Junior is thinking too much." Xiao Jian was a little embarrassed. He stood to the side and shaded his eyes with his hands as he looked into the distance. Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Jian and no longer spoke. He treated Xiao Jian differently from Yuanya. Although Yuanya looked like an untamed wild leopard, his heart was very pure. Xiao Hua quite liked him. However, Xiao Jian was different. Not only was he very shrewd, but he was also very guarded and probed a lot. In particular, he seemed to be wearing a mask on his face. He changed it whenever he wanted, which made Xiao Hua feel really uncomfortable. The reason why Xiao Hua kept making things difficult for Yuanya was that he did not want to get involved with Xiao Jian. However, Xiao Jian did not open his mouth to talk about the past, and the matter of him secretly probing Xiao Hua just now made Xiao Hua a little wary. He had just stepped into the hidden immortal continent, and for no reason, he attracted a lot of karma, especially when the origin of this karma might not be legitimate. Sure enough, after half an incense's time, some dust rose on the road. In the air, a few sword lights fell. It was Emo Jianli and Zhu Junfeng. When the two of them landed, Emo Jianli bowed and said, "Senior Xiao, why did you leave in such a hurry? If Junfeng did not mention it just now, I felt that you would leave without saying goodbye. This junior would not be able to catch up with you even if he wanted to." "That's right, senior." Zhu Junfeng also said sincerely, "The result of the bet between Shaojin Temple and Rivertide Temple has not been decided yet. Why did you admit defeat so easily?" Xiao Hua helped the two of them up and said with a smile, "Actually, this old man does not care. No matter the result, this old man will leave Longevity Town. However, just now, this old man and Xiao Jin went back to Rivertide Temple. Just like what Xingqian said, now that Rivertide Temple is worshipping Guanyin Bodhisattva, it has completely become a Buddhist temple. What's the point of us guarding that temple?" Xiao Jin wanted to leave, so this old man also left. Actually, Senior played a very important role in this great calamity. Emo Jinli still wanted to persuade, but Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Don't mention it again. It doesn't matter who the credit belongs to. The important thing is that Longevity Town was not destroyed because of this great calamity. The villagers of Longevity Town can be grateful to Guanyin Bodhisattva or Lord Sea God. It is okay." Sigh. Senior is really open-minded. Emo Jinli sighed. If everyone was like Senior, how could there be so many disputes in this world? Hee, there are many people who are more open-minded than this old man. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said, "Just like today's Ci Hang of the Buddhist sect. According to what you said, he took the water of Liao River and watched the water tribe retreat. He turned around and left, leaving only the words Ci Hang of salvation. Isn't he more open-minded than this old man?" Indeed. Zhu Junfeng also gave a thumbs up. This ancestor Ci Hang is 100 times more comfortable than Xingqian and the others. Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed and pointed at Xiao Jian. "Then what about Monk Ming you compared to Xiao Jian?" Hee. Zhu Junfeng laughed and did not say much. "Fellow Taoist Emo, you didn't come here just to see me off, right?" Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the approaching dust on the road. It was a carriage, with a few scholars on horseback, and asked. Emo Jinli glanced at Zhu Junfeng and smiled bitterly. To be honest, Junior was still talking to Junfeng on the way back to the academy. Although Senior is a Dao cultivator, you have the inheritance of us Confucian cultivators. You can be considered to be fated with us Confucian cultivators. Now, the relationship between hidden immortal continents Buddhist sect and us Confucian cultivators is very awkward. If Longevity Town doesn't have Rivertide Temple, then we can only let Shaojian Temple develop recklessly. In the future, my Longevity Academy might not be its opponent. Junior still wants to bring Junfeng to spend more time with Senior and Rivertide Temple. Haha. Xiao Hua laughed. Fellow Taoist Emo is mistaken. I don't have any relationship with Shaojian. I just happened to pass by here and stayed at Rivertide Temple for a few days. Moreover, Rivertide Temple has become a part of Shaojin Temple. If fellow Taoist Emo wants to fight against Shaojin Temple, then you should find other help. Yes, Junior understands. Emo Jinli nodded. Although Shaojin Temple is like the sun in the sky now, it is still wishful thinking if it wants to stand shoulder to shoulder with my Longevity Academy. After today, Junior will have to rush back to the sect. Presumably, the sect will have orders and measures. Junior is not good at these things, so I won't be too concerned. Junior rushed over because of 3 things. Oh, what 3 things? Xiaohua was a bit surprised. He couldn't think of what these 3 things were. First, I want to ask Lu Yi about the Water Clan's princess. Emo Jinli laughed. Previously, Junior took the princess away from the water bucket. This Lu Yi tried his best to stop me. If not him, who should I ask about the Water Clan's princess? You must have already asked about this matter? Xiaohua asked. Emo Jinli nodded. Indeed, but it's the same as not asking. Of course, Lu Yi is just an ordinary person. How could he know about the Water Clan's princess? He just saved a little girl out of kindness. Xiaohua laughed. This little girl is not ordinary. Emo Jinli said meaningfully. According to Emo Ming, he heard the Water Clan's words. This Water Clan is not an ordinary Water Clan of Liao River. It seems to be some Paradise River. Paradise River? Xiaohua frowned. He thought of the water-repelling technique in his space. It seemed to be from the West Sea when they destroyed the Water Clan of Paradise River. Paradise River? Xiao Jian, who was at the side, was shocked. Could the Dongtian River that Senior Emo mentioned be the Dongtian River of the 3 rivers? Yes, if Li Emo Ming heard it right, it should be. Emo Jinli sighed. One of the 3 rivers and 4 seas. This Water Clan's princess, even if she's from a side branch, her background is still something we can't measure. Indeed, Xiao Jian sighed. Paradise River, Chitty River, and Saint River are known as the origins of the 4 seas. Naturally, they are not ordinary water clans. That, Xiaohua hesitated. Wasn't Paradise River destroyed by the West Sea? Hearing Xiaohua's words, Emo Jinli almost lost his voice. He said anxiously, What? Paradise River was destroyed by the West Sea? How did Senior know? This is bad. Xiaohua had just shown off, and now he was in trouble. Seeing Emo Jinli so shocked, how could he not know that he had said something wrong? When Xiaohua thought about it carefully, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wasn't that right? The words that Su Zhuoyang told him that day seemed to be a water-repelling technique from the West Sea that was passed down from the Paradise River, right? He had heard it vaguely, and now he had misinterpreted it as the West Sea destroyed Paradise River. It was very different from the original words. If it was really as he said, and Emo Jinli knew this secret, how could Su Zhuoyang and the others not know? And with the old turtle Xian Cheng's caution, how could he talk about the West Sea's secret in front of them? The so-called rumors in the world? I'm afraid this is the cause, whether it's intentional or not. Xiaohua thought helplessly, and immediately covered it up. This old man heard it from someone at the EG? EG? What's EG? Emo Jinli asked curiously. Xiaohua was speechless. He really blamed himself for being too talkative. Didn't he bring Lu Yi with him just to ask more about the general knowledge of the hidden immortal continent? He hadn't even learned anything yet, and now there was another problem. What's the name of the Copper Pillar country's primordial stone trading place? Xiaohua asked helplessly. Oh, this junior understands, Zhu Junfeng said with a smile. So Senior called the auction EG. It's really ancient. Chapter 32-27. Hee, it's the auction. Xiaohua laughed. But Emo Jinli shook his head and said, Senior, if you said that you got the news from somewhere else, I would believe you. But the auction is full of good and bad people, especially those who come to help with the news. There are many groundless rumors and are not reliable. Especially the secret of the destruction of the 3 rivers, there are many rumors. Xiaohua nodded. If that's the case, the news that I heard without spending much primeval stones shouldn't be true. Yes, for this kind of thing, Senior should just listen to it. Please don't say too much. Emo Jinli said embarrassedly. I think Senior knows what to do. Junior doesn't dare to talk about it. I understand. Xiaohua smiled. What about the second thing? The second thing is Junior's little thought. Emo Jinli stretched out his hand and took out an inch-long flying sword from his sleeve. He respectfully handed it over to Xiaohua and said, Senior, this is Junior's sound transmitting eye. Please accept it. Junior will definitely report the matter of Longevity Town to the sect. Senior helped Junior fight against the Water Tribe. Junior will think of giving Senior any rewards in the future. Of course, Senior Xiao is my teacher. Junior doesn't dare to talk about making friends. I only hope that if Senior passes by Shi again, Junior will come and pay Senior a visit. Hee hee, this old man understands. Xiaohua had a very good impression of Emo Jianli and immediately kept the small sword. If this old man has any problems in the future, I will definitely trouble you. Emo Jianli saw that Xiaohua was so straightforward and was very happy. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Senior. What about the third thing?" Xiaohua waved his hand and asked, "The third thing?" Emo Jianli looked at Zhu Junfeng and said, "Junfeng, you say it?" "Yes, Mr. Emo." Zhu Junfeng agreed, then respectfully said to Xiaohua, "Senior Xiao, Longevity Town has suffered a great calamity today. Tomorrow, the prefectural governor will definitely send someone to investigate. This matter will also have to be reported to the king of Shi Nation. In this junior's opinion, Senior has rendered meritorious service to Longevity Town, and similarly to the Shi Nation. Why don't Senior wait for a few days? It won't be too late for you to leave after meeting the prefectural governor's envoy." "Someone from the government?" Xiaohua glanced at Xiao Jian and asked curiously, "Previously, I didn't see any officials in Longevity Town. During the Great Calamity, they didn't appear either. Why is it so grand after the Great Calamity? This kind of official, it's better not to meet him." Ahem. Zhu Junfeng was obviously very embarrassed. He coughed a few times and said, "Senior, you may have misunderstood. Longevity Town was a small town to begin with. The county governor in charge of Longevity Town would not send too many subordinates over. Some of his own people like Li Zhang could manage the town. And this county governor is a disciple of my Chong Yun sect. Therefore, there are many matters in Longevity Town that this junior can make decisions for. Actually, wasn't the incident of the cloak gang's harassment at the Jiangshao Temple previously caused by the government? It's just that you don't know about it." Xiaohua understood the moment he heard and said somewhat embarrassedly, "Turns out that this old man made a mistake. Sorry. It's all right." Zhu Junfeng smiled apologetically. "I've already committed too many sins for not being able to eliminate this great calamity. Perhaps the county governor's envoy is here to punish me." At this point, Emo Jianli raised his head sadly and looked into the distance. He smiled bitterly and said, "Although the hundreds of thousands of people in Longevity Town managed to escape, but the Water Clan destroyed all the rice planted along the river. This year, Longevity Town will definitely not have a harvest. The county governor's envoy may punish Junfeng, but the most important thing is to provide disaster relief. If he doesn't do well, it's normal for the villagers to leave their homes." That's strange. Xiaohua was very familiar with mulberry fields. After hearing this, he asked, "The villagers in other places usually grow rice. Could it be that it's farmland or terraced fields in the mountains? How could the villagers of Chongqing Town grow rice, which they rely on for a living, by the riverside? The river overflows easily. Once it's flood season, wouldn't that mean a year's worth of hard work would be wasted?" Hearing Xiaohua's words, not only was Zhu Junfeng stunned, even Emo Jianli was stunned. They didn't expect Xiaohua to know about this. Unfortunately, they only knew about disaster relief. As for farming, how would they know about it? "Senior." Xiao Jian opened his mouth. "I've been in Longevity Town for many years, right next to the Liao River. I know a little about this." "Huh?" Emo Jianli almost vomited blood. Looking at the two Taoist cultivators, he really wanted to scream in his heart. These people, are they still cultivators? What are they doing every day? They even know about such small things? Tell me about it." Xiaohua smiled. Xiao Jian pointed at the Liao River in the distance and said, "Senior, you should know that the Liao River rises twice a year, and each time, it covers the entire Longevity Town by 2 miles. After the river water falls, the mud and other things in the water will remain on the shore, and even the barren land will become fertile soil. The rice in Longevity Town also ripens twice a year. When the river falls, it's planted. When the river rises, it's harvested. However, the Water Clan attacked yesterday. The tide rose 30 days earlier than usual, so the rice on the shore hasn't been harvested yet." "Haha, so that's how it is." Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Every place has its own people. I'm not from Longevity Town, so I really don't know about it." "Well, I know a lot about it too," Zhu Junfeng said embarrassedly. "In that case, the disaster that fellow immortal Zhu is worried about won't be too serious." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Although there's no harvest this season, the villagers all have some food in their homes. Now that the flood is over, you can plant more rice on the shore. When the second season of rice ripens, Longevity Town will have no more hunger. Of course, the town will be a little tense during this period. When the county governor's messenger comes, you just need to get food from other places or buy it." "I'm sorry," Imogenly said in a low voice. "We only know about cultivation. We really don't know about these things. Now that I think about it, I've taken it for granted. It's best to worry about the people. It's normal to take it for granted." Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's better than taking a position without doing anything. However, since fellow immortal Zhu is so worried, why don't I help you?" Xiaohua reached out his hand and said, "Fellow immortal Zhu, do you have a storage bag or storage ring?" "Haha, there's no need to trouble Senior." Zhu Juanfeng's face was slightly red. "Longevity Academy still has some money. When I return, I'll immediately send some students to the neighboring town to buy food." "Storage bag? Storage ring?" Imogenly was confused again. After a while, he reached out his hand and took out a small bag from his sleeve. He asked, "Senior, are you talking about a small universal bag?" "Small universal bag? That's right. That's it." Xiaohua almost wanted to slap his own face. He had already thought about it and didn't want to talk about things that he didn't know. Now that he blurted out something about a storage bag and a storage ring, it made people feel strange again. "Senior, what do you mean?" Imogenly handed the small universal bag to Xiaohua and was even more confused. "Haha." Xiaohua chuckled and didn't dare to ask anymore. He released his spiritual will. Luckily, this small universal bag was the same as a storage bag. He could open it with his spiritual will. Then, he pretended to take out a storage bag from his chest and waved his hand. He returned the small universal bag to Imogenly and said, "I've been in Longevity Town for a few days. I'm fated with the people of Longevity Town. This little bit of food is my farewell gift to the people of Longevity Town." "Very good." Imogenly was overjoyed. He reached out to take it and carefully put it away. He said respectfully, "Senior is indeed worthy of being a Confucian cultivator. You care about the world and the people. Not only did you step forward in times of danger, but you also worked for the people without any fame or benefits. Although this food can't solve the problem in front of us, Senior's breadth of mind is really admirable." Xiaohua saw that Imogenly didn't check the amount of food in the small universal bag. He knew that Imogenly was worried about his reputation. After all, which cultivator would carry a large amount of food in their storage bag that they didn't need? Therefore, he didn't point it out. He looked at Lu Yi and Yuanya, who had already returned. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow immortal Imo, fellow immortal Zhu, I'll see you off for 1,000 miles. In the end, we have to part. I'll leave now. You all still have many trivial matters to attend to in Longevity Town. You and I will bid farewell here. If we meet again, we'll meet again." Junior respectfully sees Senior Xiao off. Imogenly and Zhu Junfeng said as they saw that they couldn't keep Xiaohua. Imogenly and Zhu Junfeng didn't come here alone. Behind them, there were several disciples of the academy on horseback. When Louis was chased by the Cloak Gang's disciples, it was these academy disciples who attacked and killed the Cloak Gang's disciples. Now that Zhu Junfeng saw that Xiaohua wanted to take a carriage, he naturally gave him a few horses. Then, he waved goodbye. Xiaohua floated onto the carriage. Louis drove the carriage while Xiao Jian and Yuanya rode the horses. Imogenly and Zhu Junfeng only turned around and returned to Longevity Town after the four of them had gone far away. The two of them didn't manage to keep Xiaohua. Although it was within their expectations, they still felt depressed. They thought that although Longevity Town was in a mess, the disaster had already passed. As long as the people slowly calmed down, they would be able to calm down. Therefore, they didn't fly on their swords. Instead, they walked on the main road with big strides. The remaining disciples also followed behind them with their horses. Seeing that the evening mist had already risen, Zhu Juanfeng's face was illuminated by a layer of orange. He looked at the floating clouds in the sky and sighed. Today's scene is no different from yesterday. We only saw the sun rise and the moon set, and the stars moved. However, how can the things that happened today be described with a few words? How can anyone think of today's disaster at this moment yesterday? Emo Jinli nodded slowly. Junfeng is right. What we see now is ordinary. It is the future that the people who died today hoped for. What you feel now is the past that we can't go back to in the future. Zhu Junfeng raised his eyebrows, as if he had understood something. He almost turned his head to look at the figures of Xiao Hua and the others who had already disappeared. He said, perhaps only someone like Senior Xiao, who turns around and leaves, leaving behind the same worries, can truly understand? -11. Chapter 32-28. Troubles are created by people. No one can avoid them. Emo Jinli shook his head slightly. Senior Zhao's cultivation is powerful, but he has his troubles too. He has his past that he has never run away from. His cultivation is his. Xiao Jian's cultivation is Xiao Jian's. Our cultivation can only be ours. Ha ha ha, Mr. Emo. Zhu Junfeng laughed and cupped his hands. I've learned. Everyone's cultivation path is different in this world. The Buddhist sect has its Buddhist sect, the Confucian sect has its Confucian sect, and his Taoist sect has its Taoist sect. The Buddhist sect talks about delivering all living beings from torment. The Confucian sect talks about transcending the mortal world. We pursue righteousness, self-cultivation, family governance, and world peace. What about Senior Zhao's Taoist sect? It seems to be to clear one's heart, condense one's nature, and merge with the Tao. Emo Jinli didn't quite understand and whispered. Perhaps. Zhu Junfeng nodded. They don't care about the common people, but I can't. They can all leave freely, but this Zhu cannot just wash my hands of this matter. Just come, let this Zhu see what kind of great power the Buddhist sect has, able to chase away my Longevity Academy from Longevity Town. Junfeng. Emo Jinli knew what Zhu Junfeng was thinking. He shook his head and said, we're just doing our best to help the world. This is cultivation and saving people. If it's purely a battle between the immortals and Buddhas, it's not good. Although it's hard to cross all obstacles, it's hard to find gold after blowing sand. Although the Buddhist sect's appearance is bewitching, only we Confucian sect can help the common people. Junfeng, you're the last true gold. There's no need to complain. Haha, Mr. Mo is right. Zhu Junfeng seemed to understand. He smiled and said, I've been thinking too much. It's still early to think about the future. I'm sure the sect knows about what happened in Chongqing Town and will have a solution. I'm just thinking about how to make the people in Chongqing Town feel at ease. Indeed, Emo Jinli nodded and said, now that Chongqing Town is short of food, you'd better send the academy disciples to buy food elsewhere to calm the people. The county governor's emissary will probably arrive in 2 days. They'll definitely be escorting food. Zhu Junfeng explained. The king of the kingdom of Shi is wise. He was able to consider such matters. The county governor and the others will not be negligent. At this point, Zhu Junfeng said curiously, that Senior Xiao Huaxiao is also very interesting. He doesn't seem like a Taoist expert at all. He actually knows so much about farming, and he's even more of a Confucian cultivator than me. This junior is truly surprised. Indeed, Emo Jinli said thoughtfully. This senior must be a descendant of the great Confucian scholar and has cultivated in the mortal world. However, due to some unforeseen circumstances, he decided to cultivate instead. Oh, you can take the food in this small cosmos sack. I don't think there's much, but it's all senior's goodwill. As he spoke, Emo Jinli took out a small universal bag and handed it to Zhu Junfeng. Zhu Junfeng took it and said, no matter how much it is, it's a timely rain that can save some people. It's 10,000 times better than the flashy Buddhist sect. Ah! Just now, in front of Xiao Huaxiao, the 2 Confucian cultivators were naturally too embarrassed to check the contents of the small universal bag. Now that Zhu Junfeng scanned it with his divine sense, they almost cried out in surprise. What's wrong? Emo Jinli was shocked and hurriedly looked at Zhu Junfeng. Mr. Emo, you You can take a look. Zhu Juanfeng's expression was indescribable as he handed the small universal bag back to Imo Jianli. Looking at Zhu Juanfeng's expression, Imo Jianli realized that he had been careless. When he looked at it with his divine sense, he was shocked and couldn't help but sigh. Goodness! This is what it means to have a Buddha in every home. This is what it means to have a heart for the people. Although today I saw with my own eyes that Senior Si Hang of the Buddhist sect almost became a bodhisattva, the compassion in Senior Zhao's heart is no less than Senior Si Hang's. The food in his bag is basically enough to save 10 longevity towns. Where did Senior Xiao get so much food? Zhu Junfeng was a little confused. I heard that Xiao Jin of the Jiangchao Temple can barely make ends meet every day, and this food seems to be different from what the longevity towns use daily. You can only ask Senior Xiao face to face. Imo Jinli smiled and patted Zhu Juanfeng's shoulder. With this food, the longevity towns will be in chaos even if they want to. Your last worry is also gone. That's right, I will let them see if this food is edible. This disciple will distribute the food. Zhu Junfeng made a decision. Of course, this name should belong to the Jiangchao Temple. Jiangchao Temple? The Jiangchao Temple has already been taken over by the Shaojin Temple, right? Imo Jianli shook his head. Using the name of the Jiangchao Temple, won't the Buddhist sect benefit from it? Then, it's not suitable to use the name of the Taoist sect directly, right? Zhu Junfeng hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, then use the name of Spiritual Master Xiao. Before today, this name was also very famous. Xiao Hua's space originally had rice and millet seeds, but in these 100 years, not only did Xiao Hua not worry about it, even the green-robed Xiao Hua did not care about the rice and millet seeds. On the other hand, that white, fat, and cute little fruit was very competent. Whether it was rice or millet seeds, they were all planted in time and harvested in time. On the vast plains in the space, there were a lot of food piled up. 100 years of harvest. Xiao Hua was stunned when he saw it. But he did not expect that these seemingly useless food would now start the first flame of Spiritual Master Zhao's miracle on the hidden immortal continent. At this time, Xiao Hua was naturally sitting comfortably in the carriage and chatting with Lu Yi. Lu Yi was very clever. Although he was young, his fate was full of misfortune. His mother died early, leaving only Lu Yi and his father to rely on each other. His father's character was not good. He was addicted to drinking and gambling, especially because of the departure of his beloved wife. He blamed this crime on Lu Yi, not to mention the love that a child wanted. He didn't even take care of him. Lu Yi had suffered a lot since he was young. It was normal for him to be hungry and not have a meal. Those beatings and insults were also common. It was more than what he ate. And when he was a little older, everywhere he went, he was kicked to the street by his father and begged from house to house. In the beginning, Lu Yi was too young and didn't know how to beg. He would often return empty-handed. At that time, Lu Yi's father would kick and punch him, teaching him a harsh lesson. Lu Yi would starve and cry at night. After a long time, the smart Lu Yi gradually learned how to beg. So that he would not be hungry, he even used the leftovers to feed his father. Just like that, Lu Yi followed his father through city after city, town after town, and finally arrived at Longevity Town. At this time, Lu Yi's father's body had been hollowed out by the wine. Not only could he no longer punch or kick Lu Yi, he was also paralyzed on the straw on the ground, unable to move. Thus, Lu Yi stayed in the Longevity Town and waited on his father until he passed away. Lu Yi did not have the money to prepare for his father's funeral, but he was also unwilling to let his only relative be wrapped in a straw mat and hurriedly abandoned in the wilderness. After thinking about it, he finally made a decision, which was to enter the Longevity Town's cloak gang. In the entire Longevity Town, this was the only place that could accept Lu Yi and provide him with enough money. Shaojin Temple and Longevity Academy could not accept. Do you know? Immortal Master. It was already late at night. The sky was dotted with stars. There were no people or carriages on the main road. Only the sound of a few horses' hooves was particularly loud in the silence. Lu Yi's eyes were even brighter than the stars in the sky. His voice also spread further and further in the night sky. When father beat this little one hated him to death. I always felt that I would be beaten to death by him, I always hoped that he would die sooner. But when he could not move, seeing his pitiful appearance, this little one could not bear it. After all, he was this little one's only relative, and also this little one's biological father. If this little one did not care, he would definitely starve to death in a day. This little one could not ignore it. However, this little one did not like him at all, wanting to return everything he had given this little one back to him. However, when this little one threw the leftovers in his face after he spoke ill of me, this little one discovered for the first time that not only was there no remorse or hatred in his eyes, there was instead a kind of gratification, a kind of peace. This little one seemed to have suddenly understood something. Father. Although his character was not good, he still loved this little one. He knew that he would not live for long, but he was also worried about this little one's future, so he began to teach this little one the ways of life from a young age, but his methods were really cruel. So, from then on, this little one began to pay attention to Father's eyes, as well as the eyes of others. From these people's eyes, this little one discovered a lot of things. In particular, before Father passed away, this little one saw that kind of love, that kind of yearning, that kind of reluctance in Father's eyes. Although Lu Yi's voice was faint and his tone was flat, the sound of his rapid breathing revealed the agitation in his heart. After Father left, this little one mingled in the cloak gang again, and from the eyes of the gang members, this little one saw the disgust and fierceness that had never been seen in Father's eyes before. This little one finally understood that although Father had been harsh to this little one since young, he also had no choice. When he hit this little one, he hurt this little one in his heart. That kind of complicated look in his eyes will always be unforgettable to this little one. After Father left, there was no more life in this world in this little one's eyes. Although this little one no longer needed to be beaten, this little one really missed those days of being beaten. Although this little one's body hurt, this little one's heart had someone to rely on. As long as I could see Father's shadow and hear Father's voice, this little one's heart would be at ease. Lu Yi continued. It's a pity that those days have become this little one's eternal memories, and this little one can no longer return to the past. Until one day, this little one saw Xiao Yun on the banks of Liao River. Seeing the panic and helplessness in Xiao Yun's eyes, this little one immediately thought of this little one's childhood. At that time, although this little one felt that life was worse than death, this little one did not panic. No matter how helpless this little one was, this little one still had someone to rely on. Xiao Yun's appearance was so pitiful. Her clothes did not cover her body, and her body was covered with dirty seaweed and many fleas. This little one knew that if this little one did not take care of her, she would definitely freeze to death in the cold winter night. So, this little one brought her back. Although this little one was not a good person, this little one could at least support her and make her a good person. -11. Chapter 32-29. When I first met Master Immortal, I thought that Master Immortal was just an ordinary youth. From top to bottom, Master Immortal didn't have any otherworldly appearance. Taoist Xiao and the old monk Ming, you were both older than you. However, although you saw me stealing money, you didn't catch me. Although I was a little disrespectful to Master Immortal, I knew that Master Immortal didn't care, because I didn't see any disdain or malice in your eyes. There was only a kind of peace and tranquility. It was also this kind of peace that made me feel safe for the first time after my father passed away. Even when you saved me, I only saw a kind of disdain in Master Immortal's eyes. This kind of disdain made me feel ashamed of my inferiority. I knew that Master Immortal was definitely not an ordinary person. When I heard about the miracle of the river and tide temple, I immediately had a feeling that I had to find Master Immortal. Only Master Immortal could save Xiao Yun. Only Master Immortal could get me out of the quagmire of the cloak gang. Rumble. At this point, a rumbling sound came from Lu Yi's stomach. It had been several hours since the afternoon. Xiao Huan naturally didn't feel anything, but Lu Yi and the others hadn't eaten or drunk anything. Naturally, they were already hungry. Phew. A small black shadow flew out from Yuan Ye's horse and landed on the carriage beside Lu Yi. Xiao Hua looked at it. It was Yuan Ye's usual meat bun. Lu Yi touched it, opened it, and took a big bite. He smiled and said, "Thank you, brother Ya, for the bond." And Yuanya replied and didn't say anything else. His voice was actually trembling. Xiaohua could see clearly that Yuanya was biting his lips tightly. Although Lu Yi's life was bitter, he had followed his father since he was young. Yuanya did not know who his father and mother were. He only followed the wild animals in the forest as he grew up. His life was even more bitter than Lu Yi's. Xiaohua looked at Lu Yi's thin back. In the night, it seemed a little thin. Compared to Yuanya's muscular waist and arms, it was a far cry. However, Lu Yi's quick-wittedness and calmness were something that Yuanya could not compare to. In particular, Xiaohua had casually killed the two villains from the cloak gang in the small courtyard of the longevity town. Xiaohua had only instructed Lu Yi to keep it a secret, but Lu Yi seemed to have completely forgotten about it. Even when Lu Yi mentioned it to Xiaohua a few times, he only skimmed over it, not revealing the slightest bit of information. This made Xiaohua very satisfied. As for Xiao Yun's matter, Xiaohua told him not to ask about it, so he didn't ask about it. If it was Xiaohua himself, he probably would have asked the moment he left Longevity Town, right? After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua said, "Lu Yi, your experience is a kind of tempering for you. It's the best life gift your father has given you. It's a pity that you met this old man too late. This old man couldn't meet your father who had such foresight. However, since you met this old man now, this is your fate. Everything that you were afraid of in the past, from today onwards, you don't have to be afraid anymore." Actually, in Xiaohua's opinion, Lu Yi's father might not be as good as Lu Yi said. Even the so-called tempering and the like were all Lu Yi's own ideas. However, was the nature of Su Liuyi's father important right now? Was the original intention of scolding Lu Yi important? Everyone had their own idols. Their father was the first person they worshipped in their life. Whether good or bad, it would have some influence on them. Since Lu Yi didn't become twisted because of his past experience, why couldn't Xiaohua become the hero in Lu Yi's heart? Hearing Xiaohua's words, Lu Yi's body trembled. He resisted an indescribable intuition. Before Xiaohua could speak, he said in a trembling voice, "Yes, immortal master, this little one understands. This little one serving immortal master is a great opportunity. In the future, I don't have to be afraid of anything in the world." Hee. Xiaohua laughed. It was easy to talk to a clever child like Lu Yi. However, he immediately said solemnly, "But, Lu Yi, you have to know that before anyone has a great divine ability, they can't be free and unfettered between heaven and earth. To have a divine ability, you have to pay a price far beyond what you think. This price is far more difficult than what you think now. What food and clothing, what bullying in front of this price, it's nothing but grass. As for the specifics, even if this old man told you now, you wouldn't know." Immortal master. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Lu Yi turned around and kneeled on the carriage. He kowtowed and said, "This little one earnestly asks Immortal Master to teach me the heaven-piercing technique, so that this little one can laugh proudly in the hidden immortal continent and spread Immortal Master's fame." Ha ha ha, heaven-piercing technique? Xiaohua's laughter seemed very loud in the night. This old man here doesn't have any heaven-piercing technique. Lu Yi leaned on the carriage and let the carriage slowly move forward. He didn't speak. "You can get up." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Since this old man wants to accept you as a servant, I naturally have the intention to borrow your strength. Of course, this old man also won't be stingy. Cultivation techniques. I will also choose some for you. As for how well you cultivate and what your future achievements will be, it will depend on your own ability." "Many thanks, Immortal Master." Lu Yi forcibly restrained his excitement and said in a low voice, "This disciple dares not to cultivate diligently and sully Immortal Master's fame?" Hee, you can get up." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "It's still too early to accept you as a disciple. Let's talk about it when you have the opportunity in the future." Yes, this little one understands. Lu Yi was already prepared in his heart. Even if he joined the cloak gang, there was still a test. How could it be so easy for an expert like Xiaohua to accept a disciple? He responded and got up to continue driving the carriage. In addition, Xiaohua opened his mouth again. He wanted to tell Louis about Xiao Yun's matter. He knew that Louis was a person with deep feelings and would definitely want to know about Xiao Yun's whereabouts. However, when the words reached his mouth, he stopped. He was a very curious person and wanted to ask about everything he encountered. He wanted to get to the bottom of everything. Now that he met someone who could calm down his temper, why must he reveal everything? Why not wait and see? If he didn't say anything, when would Louis ask? This was also a kind of test, right? A mortal master. After waiting for a moment, Louis didn't see Xiao Hua continue to speak. He asked curiously, "Do you have any instructions?" "Nothing, just call this old man Xiao Daoist in the future. There's no need to call me a mortal master," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "It won't be too late to call me that when this old man becomes an immortal." See, when Louis heard this, he almost choked. After a moment, he suppressed his heart that was about to jump out of his throat and carefully said, "This little one understands, Xiao Daoist." Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked at Xiao Jian, who was standing in front of Yuanya. He understood that Xiao Jian's story might be even more than Yuanya and Lu Yi's combined. Xiao Hua's feelings didn't only come from these dozen or so days, from what Xiao Jian vaguely said, as well as the appearance of those two Buddhist sect guards, even more so from when Xiao Jian received the steed from Longevity Academy's disciple, mounted it in an extremely skilled manner, the instant he raised the horsewhip, that surging expression. However, Xiao Jian's shrewdness was really too deep. He knew that Xiao Hua's impression of Yuanya was not bad. Yuanya had arrogantly asked to become his disciple several times. Even though Xiao Hua ignored him, he still vaguely pointed out that Yuanya had a master, and he wouldn't accept Yuanya as his disciple. Yuanya couldn't tell, but how could Xiao Jian not? However, he didn't mention giving Yuanya to Xiao Hua at all. Moreover, it was clear that Xiao Jian needed Xiao Hua's help, but he also wanted to maximize his own benefits. Therefore, Xiao Hua knew what Xiao Jian was thinking, but didn't bring up this topic. He wanted to see just how Xiao Jian was going to open his mouth and bargain with him. "Xiao Jian," Xiao Hua said indifferently. "Let's find a secluded and safe place. We'll rest for a bit." Yes, this junior understands. What Xiao Jian was thinking, only he knew. Ever since they left Longevity Town, he didn't say much, only hurrying along. When he heard Xiao Hua's words, he hurriedly replied. Only, when he raised his eyes and looked around, apart from the faint moonlight scattering down on the great path and mountain streams, the sounds of insects and wind by his ears, how could he tell where was a quiet place? However, after riding for a while, a slightly flat slope appeared on the side of the road. Xiao Jian hurriedly pointed, calling out, "Senior, what do you think about that place?" "This old man doesn't care," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "If you all think it's fine, then it's fine." Xiao Jian turned his horse around and looked at Xiao Hua's young face under the moonlight. Although this young man called himself an old man, he didn't feel anything wrong. Thinking back to his previous actions, he was actually that cold to Xiao Hua just because he suspected that Xiao Hua was sent by someone else. Xiao Hua, he was really blind. Different from Xiao Jin's thoughts, Xiao Hua didn't feel anything when Yuanya or Lu Yi called themselves an old man. After all, they were still young. However, Xiao Jin was already old. Looking at this face that was much older than him, Xiao Hua knew that he was older than him, but calling him an old man was still awkward. This junior understands. Let's rest here tonight. Xiao Jian turned his horse around and swung his horsewhip. The horse rushed out of the uneven road and rushed up the slope. By the time Lu Yi drove the carriage to the gentle slope, Xiao Jian and Yuanya had already dismounted and loosened the reins. They were eating the grass nearby while they waited respectfully. "You all should do what you need to do." Xiao Hua's figure flew up from the carriage and landed on the ground in the distance. He said, "This old man has already placed everything in the carriage that can be used in the tidal river temple." Yes. When Yuanya heard this, he hurriedly jumped onto the carriage. Sure enough, the originally empty carriage was already filled with things. Yuanya's hands and feet were nimble. He took down the tools from the carriage, then bent down and placed his ear on the ground to listen for a moment. He then took the wooden bucket, iron pot, and other things and went to another place. In that direction, Xiao Hua had already used his divine sense to see a stream flowing by. As for Lu Yi, he also obediently ran up the slope and picked up a lot of dry wood under the big tree. Xiao Jian also didn't stay idle. He took the horses from the carriage and sent them to the grassland, allowing them to eat grass. He looked at Xiao Hua, who was sitting cross-legged, and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he didn't walk over. -11. Chapter 32:30. Not long after, Louis started a fire on the slope. Yuanya also washed the iron pot and brought back some water. After taking the food from the carriage, he started to cook over the fire. Oh, it sounded like a wolf's howl from afar. Yuanya looked up and whispered a few words to Louis. Then, he quickly ran towards the sound of the wolf's howl. His figure jumped on the slope at an extremely fast speed. After half an hour, Yuanya came back. There were some blood stains on his body, and he carried a black thing on his shoulder. Louis saw that it was actually half a wild boar. Then, Yuanya took out a short knife and skillfully cut up the wild boar. He skewered it on a branch and roasted it over the fire. Seeing the wild boar meat sizzling in the firelight and the rich fragrance coming out, Louis's saliva almost flowed out. He was waiting for the boar meat to be ready so that he could eat it. Louis. At this moment, Xiao Hua said, "Come here." "Yes, Taoist Xiao." Louis heard and stood up without hesitation. He quickly walked over to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out a fasting pill. He handed it to Louis and said, "This is my Taoist fasting pill. After taking it, you won't be hungry or thirsty for 7 days. Are you willing to take it? This is an immortal pill. Taoist Xiao should keep it for yourself." Louis was shocked. He thought of the rumors he heard and hurriedly waved his hand. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "I only want to ask you, are you willing to take it?" "I am willing," Louis said honestly. "I used to be afraid of hunger. I even dreamed of taking this immortal pill." "Eat it." Xiao Hua flicked his finger and the fasting pill fell into Louis's hand. Louis immediately put it in his mouth and closed his eyes. After a moment, he smiled and said, "Thank you, Taoist Xiao. I am not hungry anymore." "Do you want to eat Yuanya's roasted meat?" "Yes." Louis didn't hide it. "I have a secret technique here. It will allow you to use the essence of heaven and earth to temper your meridians and bones. It will become the foundation for you to be free in the future. Are you willing to practice it?" Xiao Hua said with a smile. Louis was shocked. He looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. Then, he realized that this happiness came too quickly. He hurriedly bowed down and said, "Disciple, you don't have to call yourself my disciple." Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him. "It's just a simple qi refinement technique. If you succeed in cultivating it, then this old man can accept you as his disciple. Otherwise, you're still you. Even if you can enter the ranks, you can't call this old man master." "Yes, yes." Louis's voice was trembling. He could tell that this cultivation method could allow him to enter the ranks. Even if he entered the ranks, he might not be able to call Xiao Hua master. Then, with Xiao Hua's cultivation, the importance of this cultivation method was self-evident. After qi refining, the world's grains and meat might not be edible anymore. Xiao Hua smelled the fragrance of meat in the distance and said, "Are you willing?" "This disciple is willing." Hearing Xiao Hua's somewhat shoddy test method, Louis's expression turned respectful. Without the slightest neglect, he hurriedly replied, "Okay." As Xiao Hua spoke, he waved his hand and threw out several yellow talismans. With a flash of light, a silencing spell was cast. Then, Xiao Hua said, "Come here. Close your eyes and sit in front of this old man. This old man wants to see how your aptitude is." "Yes, immortal master." The excited Louis couldn't help but call Xiao Hua immortal master. Louis naturally understood that Xiao Hua wanted to teach him the cultivation method. This was something he had never dreamed of. Xiao Hua smiled faintly and still waved his hand, saying, "This old man hasn't agreed to accept you as a disciple. Don't be so excited. Yes, Taoist priest, this little one understands." Seeing Xiao Hua repeatedly deny accepting him as a disciple, Louis also felt a little strange. Could it be that he was really too shoddy? Actually, it was quite funny. Xiao Hua had achieved success in his cultivation, and his cultivation was also profound, but all of his mystical powers had been developed by himself. Xiao Hongyue of Shang Huaming had never given him any pointers, and neither had helplessness of the Imperial Thunder sect. On the contrary, it was Xiang Yang who had taught him a lot. When he was on the Dawn Rain continent, Xiaohua also didn't accept any disciples. Whether it was giving cultivation methods to others or setting up the fortune gate, he just threw out the jade slips and other things and didn't care about them anymore. At this moment, he felt really awkward to be teaching an aura refining technique to a secular person who had never practiced Taoist magic. He felt that it was inappropriate for Lu Yi to be his disciple. After all, he was already a late gold core stage cultivator. How could he accept a secular person who had no foundation in cultivation as his disciple? Moreover, it was his first disciple. However, Lu Yi's luck was very good. First, he was clever. Second, he was kind. Third, some of Xiao Hua's merit in the Longevity Town was related to Lu Yi. If Xiao Hua didn't give Lu Yi some benefits, there would be some karma. The most important thing was that Xiao Hua now had to find a way to refine the earth crystal Yao milk in his body. It wasn't suitable for him to fly around the hidden immortal continent. He had a lot of time to guide Lu Yi's cultivation. Therefore, Xiao Hua had the idea of teaching Taoist cultivation methods to Lu Yi. Seeing Lu Yi sit down cross-legged, Xiao Hua stretched out a finger and pointed at the back of Lu Yi's head. Then, a strand of true essence entered Lu Yi's body. Just now, on the carriage, Xiao Hua had already taken a look at the qi refining jade slips sent by Zhang Qingxiao. Inside them, there were methods and spells to check the attributes of the body. Oh! After a moment, Xiao Hua was slightly surprised and his brows wrinkled. Xiao Hua actually couldn't check the attributes of Lu Yi's body. Could it be that something went wrong when I used it for the first time? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and slightly closed his eyes. He pondered over the method in his mind and once again pointed his finger at the back of Lu Yi's head. This method was very simple. For a cultivator like Xiao Hua, it wasn't very difficult. However, after a few breaths of time, the doubt on Xiao Hua's face became even stronger. Could it be that Lu Yi's physique is heterogeneous and unsuitable for cultivation? Xiao Hua's heart turned cold. He immediately understood the root of the problem. Then, Xiao Hua rubbed his hands and several rays of brilliance entered Lu Yi's body. After Xiao Hua withdrew his magic power, ripples began to appear on the surface of Lu Yi's body. These ripples surged out layer by layer. Red, orange, yellow, green, and other colors flowed out like fireworks. After half a cup of tea's time, they converged into Lu Yi's body. During this time, not a single color could last for long on the surface of Lu Yi's body. Alas, it's really like this. Xiao Hua sighed. Although he didn't have a magic tool that specialized in screening one's physique and could truly determine whether Lu Yi could cultivate, this method and spell were no different from magic tools in the hands of a late nascent soul cultivator like him, whose strength was comparable to a late nascent soul cultivator. Since this spell already showed that Lu Yi's physique was heterogeneous and none of the 5 elements were obvious, then he was a pure secular person and unsuitable to cultivate Taoist spells. Lu Yi naturally didn't know that his fate had been determined. He was still sitting cross-legged. Although his eyes were closed, his face was brimming with excitement. Alas! Xiao Hua sighed and said, Lu Yi, get up. Yes, Taoist Elder Xiao. Lu Yi replied and hurriedly got up. He stood there respectfully and looked at Xiao Hua with eyes full of expectation. Xiao Hua actually couldn't bear it and said, Your physique. This old man has already seen it. It doesn't seem suitable to cultivate my sect's cultivation method. Of course, this old man will take another look. Lu Yi's face sank and an indescribable pain flashed through his eyes. However, he quickly put on a smile and said, Taoist Elder Xiao, it's okay. This little one is just a mortal. It's normal that I don't have the fate to become an immortal. If this little one hadn't met Taoist Elder, I wouldn't have known that there was a path of cultivation and wouldn't have thought of cultivating. Xiao Hua could naturally feel the disappointment in his heart. As the saying goes, the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Xiao Hua could only smile and say, It's all this old man's fault for being reckless. I didn't carefully examine your physique and just casually read it out for you. How about this? Since you can't cultivate the Taoist sect's divine ability, This old man will help you look at the Confucian sect and Buddhist sect. They don't seem to have high requirements for physique. This little one doesn't dare to ask for too much. In just a moment, Louis regained his calm and said respectfully, this little one only asks to be able to serve Taoist elder. It doesn't matter if I cultivate or not. All right. Xiao Hua raised his hand and the restriction around him disappeared. He said, go and rest. Louis got up and prepared to walk to the side of the fire to rest. When Xiao Jian and Yuanya heard Xiao Hua calling Louis over, their eyes were already looking over there. Their ears also straightened. Unfortunately, other than the first few words, they didn't hear anything else. The two of them naturally knew that this was Xiao Hua's technique and couldn't help but secretly regret it. However, when they were disappointed, Louis's body actually emitted a faint brilliance in the dark night, attracting their attention again. At this time, Louis left Xiao Hua's side and returned to the side of the fire. Although he didn't say anything, his face was filled with depression. After all, he was still a teenager. Although he said he didn't care, how could he not have thought about it after pondering for a long time? Brother Liu. Without waiting for Liu Yi to sit down, Yuanya handed him a piece of roasted wild boar meat and said in a low voice, did the immortal master teach you a supreme divine ability? Yuanya was originally this boring. This time, it was okay. He actually handed over a piece of meat before speaking. Liu Yi looked at Yuanya unhappily. He bit his lip, waved his hand, and said with a forced smile, Brother Ya, Taoist elder gave me a medicinal pill. I'm not hungry now. You can eat this wild boar meat yourself. Ah, an immortal pill? Yuanya's eyes flashed with fanaticism. He looked at the roasted meat that he was drooling over just a moment ago. Now, he seemed to feel that it didn't have the same fragrance as before. Then, he asked again, Brother Liu, your luck is really good. The immortal master actually gave you an immortal pill. Also, then, what did the immortal master teach you? Can you tell me? Hearing Yuanya's repeated questions, Liu Yi almost wanted to cry. It wasn't easy to encounter an immortal opportunity, but he actually couldn't cultivate. That kind of disappointment was really unbearable. -11. Chapter 32-31. Little brother, my aptitude is not good enough. I can't cultivate. Louis said word by word, tears almost rolling in his eyes. Yuanya was startled and hurriedly said with a smile, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay if you can't cultivate. It's not bad to be able to accompany Immortal Master. Look at me. I want to accompany Immortal Master, but Immortal Master doesn't want me. At the end, Yuanya muttered to himself, I don't know what my aptitude is like. It seemed that Yuanya's words of comfort to Liu Yi were not the main point. The main point was the last sentence. Liu Yi curled his lips and slightly lifted his finger, saying in a low voice, whether your aptitude is good or not, little brother doesn't know. Look at this Taoist Xiao. Yuanya looked in the direction of Liu Yi's finger. Xiao Jian, who didn't say anything just now, was already holding a piece of roasted wild boar meat in his hand. He had already run in front of Xiao Hua. Master! Yuanya was startled. He almost lost his voice and said in a low voice, He knows that immortal Master Xiao doesn't eat the food of mortals. Hee. Louis laughed and raised his hand, wiping away the tears that overflowed from his eyes. But Immortal Master is still a human, not an immortal. Although Immortal Master doesn't eat, as a junior, you must have the attitude of a junior. That's right, Xiao Hua was still a human after all. Seeing Xiao Jian holding the fragrant wild boar meat and carefully asking him if he was willing to try this delicacy, he could only smile and wave his hand, saying, You can eat it later. This old man doesn't eat meat anymore. Hee, this junior knows. Xiao Jian looked at the roasted meat in his hand and said with a smile, Roasted meat is Ya's specialty. This junior couldn't help but want to let senior have a taste. After all, senior greatly increased the face of our Taoist sect yesterday. This junior has nothing to show respect to you. Hee, it's nothing. Xiao Hua heard this and didn't point it out. He smiled and said, You saved this old man. This old man is just giving you a reward. Xiao Jian's face turned slightly red. He immediately thought of his face when he saw Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "That day, this junior lost his composure. Please forgive me." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "What you did was normal. What crime is there? It's fine as long as I don't blame you." Xiao Jian smiled embarrassedly and casually glanced at Louis in the distance. He said, "Senior, you really have the ability to see through people. Brother Liu is a clever person. If he can cultivate my Taoist cultivation technique, he might be of great help to you. His physique isn't suitable for cultivation. I'm afraid I can't teach him the basics of cultivation." Xiaohua didn't hide anything. "Oh, his physique is not suitable for cultivation?" Xiao Jian finally brought up the topic of cultivation. He was secretly delighted, but he still asked curiously, "I remember that when this junior was cultivating as a child, there was no such thing as a suitable physique." "Oh, that's right." Xiao Hua slaps his own forehead and comes to a realization. Right now, it's the hidden immortal continent, not the daybreak continent. This world's spiritual energy, perhaps, is different. Are people's aptitudes also different? Before this Xiao left the dawn rain continent, the heaven and earth spirit Qi seemed to have changed. Many disciples of the cultivation clans had their bloodlines awakened, and the cultivation sect's method of selecting disciples was no longer useful. Perhaps this Zhao's physique inspection technique is also no longer useful? Xiao Jian. Xiao Hua looks at Xiao Jian and says, "Close your eyes and sit down. This old man will take a look, yes?" Xiao Jian's voice is somewhat trembling. He hastily sits down and very skillfully crosses his legs. His two hands form a seal and place in front of his chest. The seal that Xiao Jian formed looks somewhat unfamiliar to Xiao Hua, but there is no doubt that this seal is the Dao sect seal. In the past, Xiao Jian indeed cultivated Dao sect's cultivation technique. It's just that because he was unwilling to talk about it, it caused his cultivation to be crippled, right? Xiao Hua ponders for a moment. His hands rub again and several rays of light enter Xiao Jian's body. Then, similar rays of light appear on the surface of Xiao Jian's body. Sure enough, Xiao Hua inhales a breath. He knows that his guess is correct. Xiao Jian's physique is also a mixture of the 5 elements. It's not a cultivation physique. Since Xiao Jian can cultivate, then Louis can also cultivate. There are only 2 questions left. One is what kind of cultivation technique Xiao Jian cultivates. The second is the hidden immortal continent's Qi refinement cultivation technique the same as the dawn rain continents? Senior. When the rays of light on the surface of his body disappear, Xiao Jian opens his mouth and says, "Senior, what did you discover?" "Your physique is also not suitable for cultivation," Xiao Hua says indifferently. Xiao Jian is anxious. "Senior, you didn't discover anything else?" "No," Xiao Hua shakes his head. Then, he asks, "What is your cultivation technique? Can you tell this old man?" "Sorry." Xiao Jian slightly shakes his head. "Junior, cannot tell senior." Xiao Jian's answer is not out of Xiao Hua's expectation. He thinks for a moment and asks, "What kind of test did you go through? Did you choose different cultivation techniques according to the results of the test?" "Junior does not need to go through the test," Xiao Jian replies, "but Junior has seen different cultivation techniques. Among them, there is one that is effective for Junior. Junior chose that cultivation technique." "Oh," Xiao Hua hears, slightly nods his head and says, "Call Louis over." "Yes, yes." Xiao Jian sees Xiao Hua avoiding the topic and is somewhat helpless. He agrees and turns around to leave. "Xiao Jian." Xiao Hua suddenly speaks. Xiao Jian is overjoyed and hurriedly turns his head. "Senior, what instructions do you have?" "These are a few sweet dates. They are very good to eat. You and Ya can have one each," Xiao Hua says, and with a wave of his hand, 2 fist-sized red dates appear in his hand. He passes them to Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian is really disappointed, but he still respectfully accepts and thanks Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua quickly returns to the side of the fire. Louis was originally a bit sleepy, but when he hears Xiao Hua's call, he immediately becomes spirited again. He jogs in front of Xiao Hua and says, "Taoist, what is the matter?" "Hee, I was a bit impatient." Seeing that Louis's eyes are somewhat unable to open, Xiao Hua says with a smile, "You go and rest. We will talk about it tomorrow morning." Yes, Louis is very clever. After hearing Xiao Hua's order, he immediately takes out some bedding from the carriage. After giving it to Xiao Jin and Yuanya, he also lies down with his clothes on. In a moment, he enters a dream. In the dream, he rides a flying sword and gallops between heaven and earth. A trace of a smile also hangs on the corner of his mouth. The fire is extinguished. The night is deep. Even the faint wolf howls from a moment ago can no longer be heard. Only the snoring sound of Xiao Jin and the other two echoes in the darkness. This day is really too long. The experience of this day is enough for them to use a lifetime to recollect. They are indeed too tired. In the night, two eyes that are as bright as the stars in the sky are looking at the distance with great spirit. Xiao Hua does not seem to be sleepy. Instead, he mutters in a low voice, "It's a bit strange." Could it be that the cultivation method of hidden immortal continent's Taoist sect is really different from Dawn Rain continent? But if it is not a five elements physique, how can one sense the spiritual energy between heaven and earth? How can one draw spiritual energy into the body? Perhaps the cultivation method of hidden immortal continent is unique and can let ordinary people sense the spiritual energy between heaven and earth? This is also not very possible. The Taoist sect of the three continents has already declined, and the Taoist sect of Dawn Rain continent is at its peak. Why can't the Taoist sect of Dawn Rain continent find a way to do it? Also, the spiritual energy of hidden immortal continent is exactly the same as Dawn Rain continent. At least this Xiao did not discover any difference. All cultivation methods and secret techniques can be used here. Even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here is denser than Dawn Rain continent. I can only look for some Taoist Qi refining cultivation methods first. Let's see what the so-called foundation establishment, consecration, fusion, heart stirring, spirit stillness, and other realms are all about. Xiao Hua's gaze looks at Xiao Jin's figure not far away and says with a smile, "Since you don't let this Xiao see, then this Xiao can't see? How can there not be Taoist sect cultivation methods in a place where there are vitality stones transactions?" Now you want to provoke this Xiao's curiosity again and again. Want this Xiao to take the initiative to ask about your story, but why should this Xiao enter the trap? Since you don't want to say, this Xiao will naturally not mention, this Xiao will also not take the initiative to check your meridians and dantian. Your enemy is an entire country. No matter how powerful this Xiao is, it is impossible for this Xiao to be the opponent of an entire country right now. When Louis wakes up, the sky is already bright. He wipes away the saliva at the corner of his mouth with a very red face, then looks regretfully at Xiao Hua, who is already using the Big Dipper God fist in the distance, secretly hating himself for waking up too late. About 10 zhang to Louis's left, Yuan Ye has already assumed a posture and is practicing with Xiao Hua. It looks like he also has the appearance of a master. Louis habitually touches his stomach. Sure enough, it is as Xiao Hua said, the intense hunger that he usually feels when he wakes up in the morning did not attack him today. He still feels full like yesterday. Looking around, it seems that other than flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground in his dream last night, everything is like a dream. Louis, Xiao Hua calls from afar. Follow this old man's movements. See if you can learn it. Yes, this little one understands. Louis is overjoyed. He hurriedly stares at Xiao Hua's movements. His hands and arms dance at the same time. After half a meal, Xiao Hua asks, "Louis, do you have any special feeling?" Special feeling? Louis is slightly dazed. He does not know what Xiao Hua is talking about. Oh, that means there is no special feeling. Xiao Hua looks at Louis's blank expression. He knows that he did not really practice the Big Dipper God fist. He says again, "You stop. This old man has something to say to you." Yes, Louis hurriedly stops his movements. He stands there very respectfully. But Yuanya, who is about 10 zhang, looks at Xiao Hua. He opens his mouth to say something. But when he sees a flash of brilliance around Xiao Hua and Louis, he can only see Xiao Hua's mouth moving. He can no longer hear Xiao Hua's voice. Yuanya closes his mouth again. Inside the silent restriction, Xiao Hua frankly and sincerely says to Louis, "This old man has never accepted a disciple before. You are the first one. This old man has never had the experience of teaching other people a cultivation technique from the beginning. Therefore, Yesterday's test seems to have some problems. -11. A kind of jealousy that he had never felt before spontaneously arose. In his heart, strength was supreme, whether it was in the jungle or in the arena. And Xiaohua was the most direct method to raise his strength to a level that he had always dreamed of. That's right. In Yuanya's heart, Xiaohua wasn't necessarily a teacher. He was just a method or path. Suddenly, a kind of vigilance arose in Yuanya's heart. It was as if there was an even more ferocious animal spying on him from behind. It immediately made all the hair on his body stand on end. Which immortal friend has come to visit? Please show yourself. Just as Yuanya was about to open his mouth to warn Xiaohua, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and grabbed the reins of the horse. He spoke in a very leisurely tone. Stop. Yuanya pulled the carriage with his arms and turned his head to look at the road they had come from. Immortal friend Xiao is indeed powerful. A voice that was full of praise, but also a trace of disdain, came from afar. At this time, Yuanya and the others were on a mountain ridge that wasn't very high. A winding mountain path extended from the bottom of the mountain ridge to the top of the mountain. At the end of the mountain ridge, a cloud of thick smoke was rapidly moving along the mountain path. When it reached the foot of the mountain, the faint sound of horses neighing could be heard. The thick smoke actually floated up from the mountain path and rushed towards Yuanya and the others. The sound of horses neighing could be heard. Yuanya felt a chill in his heart. His steel-like arms couldn't help but tremble. When he looked at the 4 fine horses, they were even more unbearable. Lie, lie, lie. The same neighing sound, but it was actually a sorrowful cry. The 4 horses' legs went soft and they collapsed on the ground, scared witless. Their 4 hooves trembled and they didn't dare to move. See. Yuanya jumped up and at the same time, he stretched out his hand and grabbed Lu Yi, who had his eyes closed, by the collar and easily landed on the ground. Xiaohua and Xiao Jian naturally also easily floated down from the back of their horses. They looked back with some astonishment. When the black smoke flew closer, Yuanya's eyes narrowed and he coldly looked at it. It was a large and sturdy horse. It was about 10 feet tall, and its entire body was pitch black. This large horse was very strange. Aside from a few extremely long manes, there were also strange scales covering its body. It looked like an ordinary armor. The black smoke came from the mouth and nose of this large horse. The black smoke rolled and brought with it countless sparks, enveloping the entire large horse. Looking at this strange black horse, there was a 10 feet tall strong man sitting upright. This strong man was as arrogant as the black horse. He was also covered in pitch black armor. Even the armor was emitting wisps of black smoke that enveloped his entire body. It was impossible to see this person's true appearance. The black horse fell from the sky without making a sound. Looking at the place where the black horse landed, the sparks from the black smoke had already melted the mountain rocks on the mountain path. The 4 hooves of the black horse seemed to be floating there. This one is Xiaohua. Greetings, fellow immortal. Xiaohua didn't release his divine sense. He calmly looked at the black horse and the person landing and cupped his hands. You are the Taoist Xiaohua? A loud and clear voice came from the black smoke, carrying a trace of surprise. That's right, it is this one. Fellow immortal has chased me for so long from the immortal town. How should I address fellow immortal? Xiaohua nodded and said, Hee hee. That person coldly laughed. The black smoke on his face scattered. His body slightly leaned forward and said in a low voice, This old man was sent by the small gold temple to kill you. With that, taking advantage of his body slightly leaning forward, that person stretched out his hand and actually took a 10 feet long snake spear that was as thick as a duck egg from a hook on the black horse. His 2 legs clamped on the black horse. The black horse jumped up from the ground. Black smoke and sparks filled the air. At the same time, that person waved his hand. The 8 feet long snake spear was like a bolt of black lightning that streaked across the sky. It carried the power of the person and the horse as it pierced towards Xiaohua. Yuanya suddenly froze. His originally slightly squinted eyes instantly shrank to a point. He didn't know what others were feeling. He only knew that when the person on the horse waved the 8 feet long snake spear, waves of sonic booms came from the spear. The pitch-black lightning attracted all of his attention. His mind couldn't dodge even if he wanted to. Yuanya believed that if he was facing this spear, there was absolutely no way he could dodge it. There was no other way but to die. Buddhist sect's bald donkey is really hateful. Yuanya's heart was filled with hatred. He looked at Xiao Hua with extreme worry. Woo! A sound like a gust of wind came out of nowhere. Then there was a loud bang. Yuanya felt a burst of pain in his ears. Then a wave of air rushed out from not far away. In an instant, his body was lifted up and he was sent flying towards the side of the mountain. Lie. Without waiting for Yuanya to stabilize his body, an even louder horse's mournful cry sounded. The black horse that was previously incomparably arrogant seemed to have been struck by lightning. It trembled violently and quickly retreated. There was even more black smoke and sparks coming out of its mouth and nose. However, the black smoke around its body was blown away by the wave of air just now, revealing 4 slightly trembling hooves. -11. Chapter 32-33. Looking at the black-armored man, he was in an even worse state than Yuanya. His body had been sent flying, and the 8-feet-long snake spear in his hand flew diagonally into the air. The black smoke that was originally protecting the black-armored man had now disappeared, revealing a large head under the armor. On the face of this head, there was a pair of broom-like eyebrows and 2 leopard eyes. Now, they were filled with horror. On the mountain path, Xiao Hua's thin figure stood steadily. The wishful staff in his hand gently twirled one after another, as if the attack just now was child's play. He looked at the embarrassed man in black armor with a smile that was not a smile. Xiao Hua said very easily, "If fellow immortal wants to test this Xiao skill, then say it as soon as possible. If this Xiao didn't know that you don't have Buddhist telekinesis, your life would be left here today." Humph! The black-armored person coldly snorted. Black smoke rose from his body and seeped out from within the black armor, supporting his body that had lost its balance. Immediately, he waved his hand. The black smoke rushed out like a tentacle and wrapped around the snake's spear that was about to land on the ground. At the same time, the black horse that he was sitting on stabilized and appeared below him. This old man just wanted to see how strong you are. If we talk about fighting, how can this old man directly compete with you? The black-armored man straightened his back. With a loud bang, several feet of black flames rushed out from his black armor. Amidst the black flames, a strange skeletal horse and skeleton flashed before disappearing. What was special was that the skeleton's eyes flashed with 2 pitch-black dots, and there was a kind of terrifying brilliance. Looking at the powerful black flames, Xiao Jian and the others couldn't help but tremble, and a kind of fear appeared in their eyes. Fortunately, the black flames on the man's black armor flickered in the air for a few breaths, and then quickly disappeared, slowly revealing the true face of the man in black armor. The man in black looked at Xiao Hua with extreme dissatisfaction. Fellow immortal and this Xiao are not enemies. There is no reason to fight to the death. A strange look flashed across Xiao Hua's face. He looked at the man's weathered face and said with a smile, "This Xiao doesn't know why fellow immortal chased me all the way here from the immortal town. Is there something you need this Xiao for?" "I'm Xue Ping." The black-armored man's face turned serious as he hung his snake spear on the hook. He cupped his fists and said, "I'm the left general of the country of Shi's Nanpu County. I'm currently the county governor's envoy in charge of disaster relief for the Longevity Town." "Oh, so it's General Xue." Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and cupped his hands. "I wonder, what advice does General Xue have?" "This Xue has come for 3 matters." Xue Ping's gaze was like lightning as he shot a glance at Xiao Jian, who was standing by the side. He said coldly, "The water race flooded Longevity Town on Liao River. This matter infuriated the county governor, and he wishes to investigate the root of the problem. He wants to know which demon is so arrogant. As for that so-called princess of the water race, she came from the River Tide Temple. I, Xue, want to bring this Xiao Jian back to meet the county governor. If the king is enraged, I will bring this Xiao Jian before the king." "General Xue, you are mistaken." Xiao Jian was somewhat fearful, but he was abnormally calm in front of Xue Ping. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, he immediately pointed at Louis, who was standing by the side, and said, "Although this old man is considered the abbot of the River Tide Temple, that girl was brought to the River Tide Temple by this young man named Louis. This old man doesn't know the origin of that girl, so this matter has nothing to do with me." "Oh." Xue Ping raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly. 2 wisps of black smoke spewed out from his nostrils as he said loudly, "Is this true? If you dare to deceive this general can kill you right now." "My lord." Although Lu Yi's eyes were filled with fear, he still gritted his teeth and said, "Taoist Master Xiao is right. Little Yun was indeed brought to the River Tide Temple by this lowly one. However, this lowly one doesn't know the origin of little Yun. She was only picked up by this lowly one from Liao River." Lu Yi's voice was trembling as his teeth slightly chattered. Clearly, Xue Ping's terrifying black flames had frightened him. "All right then." Xue Ping laughed sinisterly. "Since you are the source, then follow this general back to Longevity Town." Hee. Seeing Lu Yi's footsteps moving towards the black horse despite his fear, Xiao Hua sneered. "General Xue, if this Xiao hadn't left Jiangqing City, this Xiao wouldn't have cared how you treated Lu Yi. However, after leaving Jiangqing City, this Xiao has already taken Lu Yi in as a servant. His coming and going isn't up to him. You need to ask for this Xiao's opinion." "Fellow immortal Xiao." Xue Ping was stunned. He didn't expect Xiao Hua to stand up for Lu Yi. He asked curiously, "Is this true?" "Whatever this Xiao says is true." Xiao Hua replied proudly. "Fellow immortal Xiao." Xue Ping hesitated slightly as if he didn't want to fall out with Xiao Hua. He said faintly, "Liao River's water tribe flooded Longevity Town. This is something that has never happened in Nanpu County in the past 50 years. The prefectural governor is furious. I believe that the monarch's imperial edict will arrive soon. Lu Yi is the person involved. This matter is of great importance. This general came to Longevity Town on the orders of the prefectural governor to investigate the truth of the matter. I must bring Lu Yi back to Nanpu County." "Taoist," Louis said timidly, "please tell me where you are going. I will follow General Xue to Nanpu County and then look for Taoist." "You are only my servant. You have no right to speak here." Xiao Hua waved his hand and ignored Lu Yi. He looked at Xue Ping and said, "This old man has already told Mo Jinli the cause of this matter. Even if Lu Yi returns with you, the matter will still be the same. There won't be another word. This old man has a use for Lu Yi. I won't let you take him away." Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Lu Yi silently lowered his head. He took a few steps back and stood beside Yuanya again. "Fellow immortal Xiao." Xue Ping was displeased. "This general sees that you are also of the Taoist lineage. That's why I'm talking nicely with you. If it were anyone else, fellow immortal Xue." Xiao Hua's tone was the same. "This old man also sees that you are a Taoist itinerant cultivator. It's not easy for you to cultivate, so I won't argue with you. Lu Yi is my servant. How can he leave with you just because you say so? If fellow immortal insists on letting Lu Yi go with you, then there's no need to talk about the other 2 matters. You." Xue Ping's eyes widened as he stared straight at Xiao Hua. The black horse beneath him snorted and spewed out a lot of black smoke and sparks. Its front hooves kicked the mountain path and melted several deep marks into the ground. For a moment, the entire mountain path was silent. Even the wind had stopped. "Xiao Hua, you are making things difficult for this old man." Xue Ping finally spoke. "Xue Ping, if something belongs to this old man, let alone a servant, even if it's a primordial stone, if this old man doesn't agree, no one can take it away." Xiao Hua didn't back down and said indifferently, "This old man isn't making things difficult for you." "This old man? Hee, you call yourself this old man in front of me?" Xue Ping chuckled as if he was about to fly into a rage. Why would Xiao Hua be afraid of him? He looked up and down. The wishful staff in his hand was still waving slowly. He looked completely lazy. "General Xue," Xiao Jian hurriedly said from the side, "From what I know, Longevity Academy's Principal Zhu Junfeng and the prefectural governor are old friends. Since Principal Zhu knew about this and didn't keep Lu Yi, then Mr. Zhu should be able to explain it to the prefectural governor. Moreover, Mr. Imogenly and the others from the Chongyun sect didn't mention this matter. General, there's no need to fuss over this matter. General, you came here for 3 matters. The first matter, I'm afraid it's not the most important, right? Let's talk about the 2 important matters first. Forget it. Xue Ping thought for a moment after hearing Xiao Jin's words. He waved his hand and said, Longevity Academy is in charge of Longevity Town. The prefectural governor basically doesn't interfere. It's just that this matter is too terrible and the prefectural governor can't ignore it. Since Mr. Imo knows about this matter, this general can also report this matter to the prefectural governor. Hee. Xiao Hua only smiled faintly and didn't even say a word of thanks. Since Xue Ping was given a way out, he said, of course, this general isn't afraid of fellow immortal Xiao. It's just that this general came to Longevity Town not only to investigate the truth of the matter, but also to take charge of the disaster relief of Longevity Town. When this general arrived, I heard from Principal Zhu that fellow immortal Xiao had donated 100,000 dan of rations. Not only did this solve the famine in Longevity Town, it also allowed this general to bring the remaining rations back and distribute them to other disaster areas. Therefore, this general chased after you to thank Daoist Xiao. Chapter 32-34. Great, Xue Ping was about to clap his hands as he exclaimed, It's great that fellow immortal Xiao is a rogue cultivator. I wonder if fellow immortal Xiao is interested in the position of Nanpu County's right general? Xiao Hua laughed as he waved his hand. This Xiao has already said that I am an idle cloud and wild crane. I am used to being free and do not like any restrictions. Sigh, fellow immortal Xiao. Xue Ping laughed bitterly. 30 years ago, this old man had the same thoughts as you. I wanted to practice Dao techniques and refine my divine ability so that I could be free and unfettered between heaven and earth. However, reality is cruel. Our Taoist sect is already in the middle of the hidden immortal continent. Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects are not fond of us. The primordial stones, spirit herbs, and elixirs that we need for cultivation are not easy to obtain, especially Taoist cultivation techniques. Even if Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects destroy them, they will not fall into our hands. This old man cultivated to the 3rd stage of the 1st grade primordial energy back then, but was unable to advance any further. I thought of many methods, but to no avail. Thus, I had no choice but to serve under Nanpu County's county governor. You see, in just 30 years, this old man has advanced from the 3rd stage of the 1st grade primordial energy to the 2nd stage of the 2nd grade primordial energy. This is something that this old man did not even dare to think about in the past. This old man is unable to tell fellow immortal about the benefits within. However, fellow immortal can think about it. With the power of a county supporting your cultivation, how could you not advance by leaps and bounds? At least it is better than a rogue cultivator like you finding your own way, right? Xue Ping advised again. Under Nanpu County's county governor, there is only this old man as the left general. The cultivation of the other Taoist cultivators are all shallow. This old man alone is unable to support them and is unable to contend against the other Buddhist sects and Confucian cultivators. When this old man arrived at Longevity Town, I heard Zhu Juanfeng's words and knew that fellow immortal's strength is immense and that you have the courage to defeat 10,000 men. I immediately rushed here to thank fellow immortal. If this benefit is not given to my Taoist fellow immortal, who else can it be given to? Secondly, I wish to ask fellow immortal to lend this old man a helping hand and become the right general of Nanpu County. With the 2 of us working together, we will definitely be able to make a name for ourselves in Nanpu County and even request for the position of general from the king. Not only will it make a name for itself in the country of Xi, it will also be extremely beneficial to our cultivation. When he spoke up to hear, Xue Ping sighed again. Actually, in the end, it's because I've seen too few Taoist disciples, and it's even rarer to see a disciple who can charge into battle like fellow Taoist. I can't let go of this opportunity. Xiaohua doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. He only chuckles and says, Many thanks for General Xue's good intentions. This Xiao really can't go back with you. This Xiao has more important things to do. General Xue, please pay more attention to the right general. Fellow immortal Xiao, are you really not going to reconsider? Shui Ping seemed to have the intention of recruiting him. That strike from the first time they met had left an extremely deep impression on him. No need. If General Shui has nothing else, then this Xiao will take his leave. We will meet again someday. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, Fellow immortal Xiao. Seeing Xiao Hua's resolute reply, Shui Ping knew that he couldn't keep Xiao Hua, so he hurriedly said, since fellow immortal isn't willing to be the right general, then this Shui doesn't dare to force it. However, this Shui has something to ask fellow immortal for help next year. I wonder if fellow immortal is interested? Xiao Hua frowned and immediately thought of the treasure hunt in the West Sea. He looked at Shui Ping and smiled bitterly. General Shui, could it be that you've discovered another lost treasure somewhere? Ah, fellow immortal. Shui Ping was shocked and asked curiously, Fellow immortal knows? What does this Xiao know? Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, This Xiao isn't interested in treasure hunting. General Shui should find someone else. Sigh, fellow immortal, do you think this old man doesn't want to find someone else? Shui Ping smiled bitterly. This old man is familiar with some Taoist disciples, but they are all useless. The one with profound cultivation is a Confucian disciple, and that place happened to be a Taoist ruin. I heard that there are ancient elixirs hidden inside that are extremely beneficial for breaking through bottlenecks. This old man also needs to prepare for the bottleneck of the second grade of Essence Force. Second grade of Essence Force, ah? Xiao Hua muttered to himself and thought, this hidden immortal continent is very strange. How could Taoists be exterminated by them? What is the truth behind it? If this Xiao wants to return to the Dawn Rain continent, these Taoist ruins are probably the same as the Buddhist ruins on the Dawn Rain continent. I have to take a look, right? If a mere second-grade Essence Force cultivator can take a look, then what's wrong with this Xiao going? After all, the Taoist sects in the hidden immortal continent have already declined. It's good to be able to help a Taoist disciple. All right, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and nodded. This Xiao can lend you a hand. However, this Xiao also has a matter to trouble General Shui. Please speak. Shui Ping didn't find it strange at all and smiled. If fellow immortal Xiao has any conditions, feel free to state them. You and I are villains before gentlemen. Xiao Hua waved his hand. It's not much of a condition. It's just that this Xiao is looking for a place called Lu Town. If General Shui can help this Xiao find a place called Lu Town in the hidden immortal continent, this Xiao will definitely help you. Hiss. Shui Ping took a deep breath and looked at Xiao Hua. His expression was strange, but he couldn't tell what he was thinking. After a moment, he sneered again. Fellow immortal Xiao, are you making fun of this old man? If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. Why make such a boring condition? Who knows how many countries there are in the 9 great provinces of the hidden immortal continent? Who knows how many villages and towns there are? How can this old man find the Lu Town you're looking for in the vast sea of villages and towns? Sigh, it's really not as simple as this Xiao and Xiao Jian thought. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart and spoke again. General Shui is wrong. This Xiao isn't lying. This Xiao is indeed looking for Lu Town. Since General Shui is the left general of the country of Xi's Nanpu County, you must have some conveniences in this area. All right. Shui Ping saw that Xiao Hua wasn't speaking nonsense and nodded slightly. This Shui can help you search, but this old man is powerless. I'll search as much as I can, right? In that case, many thanks to General Shui. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and added another sentence. How about this? If General Shui is only searching in Yuzhou, then how about adding a sect called Misty Sect? Misty Sect? What sect is that? Confucian or Taoist? Shui Ping frowned again and asked patiently. This Xiao also doesn't know. Xiao Hua spread his hands and smiled bitterly. This Xiao is also helping others search. Since you can help this Xiao can also help General. All right. Shui Ping nodded. If it's only Yuzhou, this Shui can give it a try. Since General Shui has promised this Xiao, then this Xiao will also promise General Shui. When this Xiao is free next year, this Xiao will go to Nanpu County to look for you. How about that? Xiao Hua didn't dawdle and agreed very swiftly. Great. Shui Ping clapped. With fellow immortal Zhao's help, this matter will be settled. As he spoke, Shui Ping took out a pitch-black token from his armor and handed it to Xiao Hua. Fellow immortal Xiao, this old man's token. When you come to Nanpu County next year, you can use this to find this old man. This old man will return today and make preparations. I will quietly await Immortal Senior's arrival in my residence. Hee, all right. Xiao Hua grabbed the token and said, when this Xiao is free next year, this Xiao will go look for General. All right, this Shui will take his leave. Shui Ping bowed on the horse and patted the back of the black horse's neck. The black horse raised its head and neighed. Black smoke and sparks spewed out from its nose and mouth. Black fog also appeared from its 4 hooves. It carried Shui Ping and charged into the air towards Longevity Town. Hee, this Shui Ping didn't dare to jump off the black horse from start to finish. Xiao Hua sneered as he watched the black fog fly away. It's not only because he's wary of this Xiao, but also because his cultivation is connected to this black horse. This kind of cultivation method seems to be somewhat similar to Huan Country's beast cultivation method. Seeing Shui Ping fly away with the black horse, Xiao Hua retracted his gaze. The 4 horses that had collapsed on the ground due to the black horse's arrival now stood up again. They all snorted and sweat dripped from their bodies. It was obvious that they were extremely frightened. Damn it, what kind of monster is this black horse Shui Ping? Could it be a demon from the 1,000-beast sacred realm? With this horse, is there still a need to fight on the battlefield? As long as this horse neighed a few times, wouldn't the other horses collapse on the ground? His title of Left General is truly a waste. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw that the horse couldn't even pull the carriage. Yuanya, pack up. We'll rest here for a while. Xiao Hua saw that there was no way to leave and could only instruct. Yes. Yuanya's reply was always concise. Lu Yi walked over with a nervous expression and said in a low voice, Taoist priest, this little one thanks you. Humph, go and comprehend it. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes at him. If you can't even comprehend such a simple incantation, you might as well have been taken away by that charcoal head. Being this old man's servant is truly shameful. Yes, this little one will continue to comprehend. Lu Yi's somewhat long face immediately smiled and hurriedly went to help Yuanya tidy up the horses. However, how could Yuanya allow him to do so? He was still chased to the side and sat there, closing his eyes to continue his interrupted comprehension. Senior Xiao. Xiao Jin walked over and said with a smile, although Shui Ping's actions are somewhat reckless, what he said is extremely true. Senior Xiao should agree to head to Nanpu County. Oh? Xiao Hua raised his brows and said with a smile, if what fellow Taoist Xiao said is the same as Shui Ping, then there's no need to say anything. This Xiao has his own plans. This Xiao doesn't care about the few conditions he mentioned. If you have other ideas, feel free to say them. Xiao Jin was somewhat embarrassed. He knew that Xiao Hua was very dissatisfied with him for pushing Lu Yi out. However, in reality, Xiao Yun was brought to the Tidal River Temple by Lu Yi. If he didn't hear Xiao Hua and the others mention it on the way, he wouldn't have known that Xiao Yun was the princess that the Water Tribe wanted. Xiao Hua was obviously dissatisfied with Xiao Jin, and Xiao Jin himself felt wronged. -11. Chapter 32-35. Junior doesn't know about the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm and the Pure Land. Xiao Jin smiled, but on the hidden immortal continent, if one wants to make a name for himself, whether it's a Confucian cultivator or a Taoist, one must have a strong backing. Otherwise, it's impossible to step into the ranks of cultivation. Especially my Taoist. Right now, you can teach Louis the basic incantation and let him enter the foundation building stage. However, if he doesn't have the support of spiritual herbs and medicinal pills, I'm afraid it will be impossible for him to reach the enlightenment and fusion stages by himself. Senior has already cultivated to the 3rd level of origin energy and is the target of recruitment for the prefectural governors and monarchs of various countries. Senior can take advantage of this. No need to say more. Xiao Hua waved his hand. This Xiao has no interest in this matter. Yes, Junior understands. Xiao Jin hurriedly shut his mouth, but after thinking for a moment, he couldn't help but say, actually, Senior can also hand over the matter of finding Luzhan to Shui Ping. The country of Xi is neither big nor small in Yu province and has a good relationship with the nearby countries. It's hard to say about other provinces, but you province should be able to find out. This old man has already entrusted it to him. Xiao Hua said indifferently, oh, by the way, it seems like you're very familiar with the situation in Yu province. Yes, Junior did a lot of homework in this area back then. Xiao Jian's eyes flashed with joy. He finally got the words he wanted to say. Oh, then let this old man ask you. Xiao Hua seemed to be interested. How many Taoist sects do you know? How many Taoist rogue cultivators do you know? This. Xiao Jian didn't expect Xiao Hua to suddenly ask this and was somewhat caught off guard. However, he hesitated slightly and smiled bitterly. Senior, you know that Taoist sects are not allowed to be established on the hidden immortal continent. How do you want Junior to answer? Hiss. Xiao Hua was slightly surprised. To be honest, for the past 10 days, he had been trying to find out the specific situation of the Taoist sects in the hidden immortal continent. However, until now, he hadn't seen a cultivator with a cultivation level that could directly talk to him. Not to mention Xiaojian, even Xueping just now was only at the Foundation establishment realm. Their strength determined their vision. They wouldn't give Xiao Hua a real answer. However, Xiao Hua still did not expect that on the hidden immortal continent, the situation of the Taoists was so bad. Of course, this situation was much better than when the Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators were on Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua's eyes turned again, and he said with a smile, not on the surface, but in the dark, I don't know. Xiao Jian smiled bitterly. When I stepped into Taoist cultivation, I was already warned. He could cultivate, but he absolutely could not establish a sect. If he did, the Confucian cultivators would definitely send people to exterminate him. This was the iron law of the hidden immortal continent. Is that bullshit immortal Buddha grand ceremony supposed to be like this? Then why do you still want to cultivate Tao techniques? Why didn't he choose Confucian cultivation? Even the Buddhist sect is better than the Taoist sect. Xiao Hua asked with a smile that was not a smile. I'll let Senior know. Xiao Jian smiled bitterly. This isn't something that Junior can choose. My single Yang kingdom was founded on Taoism, and I was chosen to be the crown prince since young. Of course, I have to cultivate Qi and cultivate Taoism. Xiao Hua stared blankly and asked curiously, what? Taoism is not allowed to establish a sect, but if you establish a country with Taoism, you can? That means there are many countries supported by Taoism in the hidden immortal continent? Indeed. Xiao Jin nodded, but Senior is too optimistic. In the hidden immortal continent, most of the countries are established by Confucian cultivators, and there are very few Taoists. And now, there are a few, replaced by the Buddhist sect. That's really strange. Xiao Hua was especially puzzled. This was somewhat illogical. Could it be that it's okay for this old man to support a country? Of course you can. There is no doubt. Xiao Jin's eyes lit up, and he said with certainty, with Senior's current cultivation, you can barely be the state teacher of a country. If your cultivation is a bit higher, you can naturally control a country with your own will. Hee. Xiao Hua smiled. I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? Is the king willing? Xiao Jin showed some awkwardness and said with a smile, of course it has to be mutually willing. Moreover, being the state teacher is different from being the left general. You have to contend with the nearby countries, and you have to help the king expand his territory. Forget it. It's not tiring enough. Xiao Hua waved his hand, seeming very dull. But if you stop the state teacher and control a country, you can easily get all the things you need for cultivation. Xiao Jian was a bit anxious and quickly explained. My cultivation is still shallow, so I don't dare to think too much. Xiao Hua raised his head and said, Yuan Ye has already prepared the carriage. Let's hurry. Yes, Xiao Jian was a little dejected. It was not easy for him to say some of his thoughts in the conversation just now, but he was mercilessly interrupted by Xiao Hua again. He really did not know why Xiao Hua, who looked very approachable, was so good to the ruffian Lu Yi and was equally good to the uneducated Yuan Ye. Why didn't he want to listen to his thoughts? In the following few days, the number of carriages decreased, as if they had entered a remote village. Xiao Hua thought that next, the main road would be replaced by a small road, and the small road would be replaced by a wasteland. He was afraid that he could only ride a horse and walk. However, in less than 2 days, the number of carriages increased again. The main road did not show any signs of narrowing, but instead became more spacious and flat. While Xiao Hua was feeling a bit strange, before he could ask Xiao Jian, he saw that several li away in front of him was a large and magnificent river. Above the river, there was a stone bridge that spanned across both sides. Soldiers that had never been seen in the past 10 days were now standing on both sides of the bridge, wearing neat armor and holding bright weapons in their hands. They were valiant and high-spirited. Xiao Jian, where is this? What kind of bridge is this? Why is it so important? Xiao Hua was a bit puzzled. When he got closer, he asked Xiao Jian, "You actually need to send so many soldiers to guard it?" "I'll let Senior know." Xiao Jian looked up. This is the border of the country of Shi. This river is called Family River, which is the border between the country of Shi and the country of Jiasa. The people of Shi call this bridge Fanji Bridge, while the country of Jiasa calls it Li Bei Bridge. This bridge connects the country of Shi and the country of Jiasa, so the two countries naturally have to send a large number of soldiers to guard it. As long as we cross this bridge, we will reach the border of the country of Jiasa. Ah? Xiao Hua almost cried out. This is the border of the country of Shi? Xiao Jian, tell this old man, this country of Shi, how big is it? At this moment, Xiao Hua finally realized that he was a country bumpkin. He always thought that the country of Shi was as big as the country of Shi in the cultivation world. Who would have thought that after walking for a few days, he actually walked, yes, walked, not flew, and reached the border of the country of Shi. Thinking back to a few days ago when he casually brushed off Shueping, Shueping didn't suspect him at all. It turns out that Shueping knew that he could rush back to the country of Shi next year, even if he had to walk. Xiao Jian clearly didn't understand Xiao Hua's astonishment and replied curiously, "Previously, this junior has already told Senior that the country of Shi is considered a medium-sized country in the Yu province. It should have a radius of 1,000 li. Nanpu County is also the county closest to the country of Jiasa. Although Longevity Town is also the closest town to the country of Jiasa, it is still about the same. As for the country of Jiasa, according to what this junior knows, its radius is only about 800 li, smaller than the country of Shi. And on the other side of the country of Jiasa is the country of Bronze Pillar. The country of Bronze Pillar is rich in bronze, and its territory is twice the size of the country of Shi. It should be about 2,000 li. It is said that the country of Bronze Pillar is currently fighting with its neighbor country of Jiang. If there are no accidents, the country of Bronze Pillar should be able to win. Then, after the country of Bronze Pillar annexes the country of Jiang, it will expand to about 3,000 li. Damn it, this Xiao understands? Xiao Hua almost roared from the bottom of his heart. No wonder this hidden immortal continent has provinces as the boundary. It is within these provinces that the countries are divided. It turns out that these countries are all extremely small and can't be compared to the countries of Shi, Ming, and Lian on the Xiaoyu continent. If this is the case, not to mention one country, even if this Xiao supports 5 or 10 countries, so what? It's just a territory of 10,000 li. Looking at Xiao Hua's green and red face, Xiao Jian didn't know what Xiao Hua was thinking. Xiao Hua didn't say anything, and he didn't dare to ask. However, when he saw the side of the bridge, the line of carriages waiting for the soldiers to inspect and pay, he immediately understood. He hurriedly explained, "Senior, although we need to pay taxes to cross the border between the two countries, we are Taoist disciples. Yuan Ye and Lu Yi are considered our servants. There is no need to pay for them. Senior, you don't need to worry." "Am I that stingy?" Xiao Hua unhappily glared at Xiao Jian, but he was still very surprised. It was just a short period of 10 days. How could Xiao Jian know that he was stingy? Yes. Xiao Jian hurriedly replied. "Oh, that's right. This Jiasa country is only 800 li. It's a small country. Then why is the Copper Pillar country giving up so much?" Xiao Hua asked, puzzled. Xiao Jian understood something and said with a smile, "Didn't this junior already say it before? Every country has an imperial advisor and the others, and even has the support of various Confucian sections. Although this Jiasa country is small, it should have the support of the Chongyun sect and other Confucian sects, so the Copper Pillar country does not dare to invade. As for the country of Jiang, if nothing unexpected happens, it should be supported by a Taoist senior. At this point, Xiao Jin's eyes flashed with a hint of sternness, and he added, of course, in the past few decades, the Buddhist sect has infiltrated the hidden immortal continent too quickly. Perhaps the situation in the country of Xi has long exceeded this junior's knowledge, and there is a high possibility that there is an expert from the Buddhist sect secretly presiding over the country of Jiang. No matter where you go, power, benefits, and strength cannot be separated. Xiao Hua sighed and did not ask any more questions. -11. Chapter 32-36. Just as Xiao Jin said, there were many carriages and merchants waiting to be inspected by the Shi soldiers. They passed through the border and entered the bridge. Meanwhile, Xiao Jin spurred his horse on, not even bothering to line up. He galloped through the center of the road, heading towards the soldiers who were holding weapons and guarding the bridge. Taoist priest, please wait. One of the soldiers walked out and raised his hand, shouting, please take out the official document for inspection. Boundless holy man. Xiao Jin called out his Taoist name. He reached into his bosom and took out a square jade clip. He handed it over and said with a smile, this is my official name. Please check it, General. Taoist priest, please wait a moment. The soldier took the jade clip without looking at it and hurried towards the side of the bridge where several tents were located. Not long after, a strong man wearing armor with a sword hanging from his waist quickly walked over with the jade clip in his hand. He bowed and said, this general, Li Xinyu, greets Taoist priest Xiao. I, Xiao Jin, greets General Li. Xiao Jin's face was indifferent. He raised his left hand and saluted, saying, I brought my disciples and seniors to travel around Yu province. At this moment, we are heading towards Jiasa country. Please make an exception for us. Taoist priest Xiao, you can naturally bring your disciples to Jiasa country. This general only needs to inspect the carriage. Li Xinyu looked at Xiao Jin, then looked at Xiao Hua and the others, and said with a smile, but you only wrote Taoist Xiao and a boy named Yuanya in the official document. There are still a few blanks left behind, and the remaining 2 boys. How dare you? Xiao Jin shouted, raising his hand. He looked at Xiao Hua very respectfully and said, this is the senior of this old man's sect. How can this old man's name be written on this old man's official document? This general greets immortal master. Li Xinyu was shocked and hurriedly bowed in front of Xiao Hua. After all, for a young man to be called a senior by an old man, this young man immediately had the demeanor of an immortal master. Xiao Hua nodded and waved his hand. Li Xinyu couldn't help but stand up. Immortal elder. Li Xinyu straightened up, swallowed his saliva, and said nervously, I know that Immortal Master is a senior expert, but do you have an official document? This old man doesn't have any official documents. Xiao Hua shook his head. This old man also doesn't need any official documents. This. Li Xinyu gritted his teeth and said awkwardly, the order I received is that anyone who comes from the border in front of me must either pay customs duties or have an official document. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded. This old man won't make things difficult for you, senior. Xiao Jin smiled and said, as long as you fly over this bridge, you won't have to pay any tariffs. Humph. Xiao Hua unhappily looked at Xiao Jin. He clapped his hand and took out a low-grade spirit stone, throwing it to Li Xinyu and said, this old man doesn't have the gold and silver used in the secular world. This is a primeval stone. What do you think? Immortal Master. Li Xinyu didn't expect Xiao Hua to be so amiable and actually take out a celestial stone. He hurriedly and carefully caught it, smiling apologetically. You don't have to do this. The order is just to prevent people from pretending to be outsiders. Since Immortal Master is an outsider, you naturally don't have to pay customs duties. How can this old man take back what he took out? Xiao Hua said indifferently, you are also a general of a region, so you still have to abide by this order. Besides, this old man doesn't care about a single primeval stone. Yes, this little one understands. Li Xinyu lowered his head. Can this old man leave now? Xiao Hua asked politely again. Li Xinyu hurriedly stretched out his hand and pulled the reins of Xiao Hua's horse, saying respectfully, "This little one will send Immortal Master over." Thank you for your trouble." Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. "Damn it, a single primeval stone. It's gone just like that." Xiao Jian watched as Li Xinyu put the primeval stone into his pocket. His eyes turned into hooks, wanting to hook the primeval stone out of Li Xinyu's pocket. He complained in his heart. Li Xinyu led Xiao Hua's horse all the way to the middle of the bridge before stopping. He bowed and said, "Immortal Master, after crossing this bridge, the border of Jiasa country will be there. This little one doesn't dare to cross, so this little one can only send you here." "Okay, thank you, General Li." Xiao Hua nodded his head and patted the horse. The horse took small steps and crossed the blood-red mark in the middle of the bridge. At this moment, waha! A burst of noise that sounded like the chirping of birds came from the distant horizon. At the same time, a gust of wind blew, causing the various flags on the bridge to flutter in the wind. Lie. The pitiful horse let out a mournful cry, as if it was extremely scared. It kicked its four hooves and was about to rush down the bridge. "Humph!" Xiao Hua frowned and coldly snorted. The horse immediately felt its body become heavier. Don't talk about running, it couldn't even stand stably. Just as the horse was about to collapse on the ground, Xiao Hua floated down and patted the horse. The horse obediently lay down on the bridge. Caw, caw, caw. The sound of birds chirping turned into a burst of horse laughter. It came from the right side of the bridge. A black cloud flew over from there and quickly passed by everyone's eyes. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over and saw an extremely ugly demon within the black cloud. Its body was covered in black fur, but it was holding an almost naked woman in its embrace. The woman was as beautiful as a flower. Her skin was whiter than snow. Her lotus-like arms were wrapped around the demon's neck. The black and white contrast between the two people was extremely clear within the black cloud. These two people didn't seem to care about the secular people on the ground at all. They seemed to be teasing them as they rushed forward and disappeared. "See? Isn't that a demon?" Xiao Hua was a little shocked. Looking at the trembling Li Xinyu not far away, he asked curiously, "How can it come and go so freely in Jiasa country and Shi country?" "Good, Senior Immortal knows." Li Xinyu lowered his voice and said, "This demon is not from my Shi country. In the middle of Jiasa country, Bronze Pillar country, and Jiang country, there is a black cloud ridge. It is a place that the three countries are unable to take care of. If I'm not wrong, this demon should be from the Black Cloud Ridge." "Oh, Senior Immortal, if you go to Bronze Pillar country, you naturally won't be able to, but if you still want to go from Bronze Pillar country to Jiang country, then you will have to pass by the Black Cloud Ridge. Senior Immortal must be careful. I heard that many people have been buried there." "Yes, this old man knows." Xiao Hua nodded. He floated onto the horse and was about to enter Jiasa country. Senior Immortal. Another voice came from behind Xiao Hua and the rest. "Oh?" Xiao Hua turned his head to look, only to see an old man with white hair and a beard catching up to them while panting. Xiao Hua looked at the old man and frowned. It was obvious that this was an old man from the secular world. He looked to be around 60 years old. To be honest, compared to Xiao Hua's age, he was really like a child. However, Xiao Hua looked to be in his 20s. When facing this kind of white-haired old man, he felt a kind of pressure in his heart. He would naturally call him an old man, and would also naturally call him a brat. Could this be the legendary judging a book by its cover? Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and laughed bitterly to himself. "What's the matter, old man?" Fortunately, before Xiao Hua could speak, Xiao Jian had already stood in front of Xiao Hua. "Greetings, Taoist." The old man bowed respectfully. "This old man is Qi Jian from the Sun Hai Trading Company. I came to look for Taoist. There is something I would like to discuss with Taoist." As he spoke, the old man glanced at Xiao Hua. Xiao Jian frowned and said curiously, "I and the others don't have a place to stay, and we don't have any training grounds. If old man has any wish to fulfill, I'm afraid I and the others won't be able to satisfy it." "Taoist." Qi Jin's face had a trace of pleading as he said in a low voice, "This old man doesn't want to pray for the gods. This old man has another matter to discuss with Taoist. If possible, I would like to ask Taoist to cross the bridge with your master and wait by the roadside. This old man will explain everything." As he spoke, Qi Jin took out a small silver ingot and stuffed it into Xiao Jian's hand. He said, "In addition, my Sun Hai Trading Company will pay for the customs for Taoist and the others to enter Jasa country. I only hope that Taoist can hear about this matter." Xiao Jian touched the silver ingot and felt it was slippery. His heart was already blooming with joy. He turned to look at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Senior, what do you think?" "Hee, you have already agreed. So why ask this old man?" Xiao Hua smiled. At this time, he already had a plan for the road ahead. Everything was just a kind of experience. No matter what the old man's request was, in Xiao Hua's eyes, it might not be difficult. Even Xiao Hua had some intuition that it was related to the evil spirit in the black clouds. "I's master has agreed. I will wait for you at the front." Xiao Jian looked at the many carriages lined up behind the old man and knew that this was the Sun Hai Trading Company's fleet. It would take them a lot of time to cross the border. Yes, thank you, Taoist. Thank you, Immortal." Qi Jin was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. He bowed and hurriedly ran to the back. Following his shouts, a burst of laughter rang out. Some of the people next to the carriages saluted Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua didn't care about these people's thanks. Instead, he asked in astonishment, "Xiao Jian, could it be that, after crossing the border between Xi and Jasa country, not only do we have to pay customs in Xi, but also in Jasa country?" "Senior." Xiao Jian pulled the reins of his horse and followed Xiao Hua down the bridge. He explained, "That's right. However, people and goods are different. People only have to pay 10 copper coins for crossing the border, while goods have to pay according to the value of the goods." Isn't this robbery? Xiao Hua immediately thought of the perverted sea beast he encountered in the West Sea. What was the difference between this and a sea beast? If there was any difference, it would be that they were openly using the banner of righteousness, making it impossible for people to avoid. -11. Chapter 32-37. Ha, Senior, this is different. If the goods of Sun Hai Trading Company are bought in Xi, there must be an official document to pay the tax. Here, there is no need to pay. If the Sun Hai Trading Company is passing through Xi, they have already paid the tax when entering Xi. When leaving Xi, there is no need to pay again. Xiao Jian explained with a smile. However, looking at Qi Jin's appearance, it seems that they have traded in Xi. Moreover, there is no official document to pay the tax. At the border, they must pay a certain percentage of the tax. Then when they enter Jasa country, they must pay the tax. Xiao Hua asked, "That is natural. This tax is from Xi, the other side is from Jia country." Xiao Jian nodded. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion. Alas, this business is not easy. The tax is an important part of a country's income and expenditure. It is impossible to exempt it. Xiao Jian said with familiarity, "Of course, it is not only for business, but also for anything in this world, even if it is to be the ruler of a country." While speaking, several people went down the bridge. Sure enough, under the bridge, there were some people similar to the soldiers of Xi. However, their armor and flags were completely different. Everyone entered the border of Jiasa country. Half a mile away from the bridge, there was a tea shed. Xiao Hua looked at the scorching sun above his head and ordered them to rest near the tea shed. After waiting for a full meal's time, they saw nearly 20 carriages led by Qi Jin coming out of the soldiers' blockade. When Qi Jin saw the carriages parked in front of the tea shed, the disappointment on his face immediately disappeared. He urged the horse under him and hurriedly brought a man dressed in martial arts clothes to the tea shed. There were not many people in the tea shed. Xiao Hua and the other three were sitting at a shabby table. Except for Yuanya, who was drinking cup after cup of tea, the other three closed their eyes and did not speak. "Taoist." Qi Jin rushed into the tea shed. He originally wanted to talk to Xiao Hua, but after thinking for a moment, he walked to Xiao Jian and cupped his fist. "Our humble trading company has too many goods. It is a bit troublesome to pass the customs. Sorry for the long wait." "No matter." Xiao Jian opened his eyes and smiled. "We are just traveling. Whether we walk or lie down, it is all cultivation. This weight is nothing. Taoist is really a master. What you said is really profound. Qi Jin looked at Xiao Jian with an extremely admiring gaze. This old man and the others have worked so hard for Adu's item. I don't know when we'll be free. When it's time to be free, you'll definitely be free. When you can't be free, just say it. Xiao Jian was much more familiar with these words than Xiao Hua. Yes, this old man understands. Qi Jin put his palms together sincerely. However, when he saw Xiao Jian's unfriendly expression, he immediately understood. He put his palms down awkwardly and pointed at the burly man beside him. Escort Chen, this is the Taoist Xiao I mentioned just now. Come and meet him. I'm Chen Kai from Fu Wei Escort Agency. Nice to meet you, Taoist masters. The burly man stood up and cupped his fists in greeting. His voice was loud and clear, but there was a valiance and unwillingness in his eyes. Boundless holy man, Qin Zhuang, greetings. Xiao Jian seemed to understand something and returned the greeting with a smile. He then looked at Qi Jin and said, Elder Qi, what do you mean by this? Qi Jin was a little embarrassed and explained his intentions. It was as Xiao Jian had expected. The distance from the border of Jiasa country to the nearest city was about 100 miles. There was a section of the mountain road that was quite dangerous. There were 3 groups of mountain bandits alone. These mountain bandits often went down the mountain to rob, and the merchants passing by were all terrified. Jiasa country had sent troops to kill them several times, but they returned without success. In the end, they simply ignored them and let these mountain bandits fend for themselves. Since the mountain bandits were born, how could they be destroyed? Although the leader and number of the mountain bandits were constantly changing, these mountain bandits had become a malignant tumor at the border of Jiasa country. Unfortunately, there was only one main road from the kingdom of Shi to the kingdom of Jiasa. On the left side of the mountain road, there was an impassable forest. Therefore, even if a merchant like the Sun Hai Trading Company knew that there were bandits here, they could only brace themselves and pass through. At best, they could hire more armed escorts like the Fu Wei Escort Agency to protect their own trading company. Qi Jian had just seen the Shi general's unusual respect for Xiao Hua, so he had a sudden idea to ask Xiao Hua and the others to protect him through this section of the mountain road where the mountain bandits were rampant. Although Xiao Hua and the others were not escorts, Qi Jin's lack of trust in Fu Wei Escort Agency and his behavior of seeking medical treatment halfway through the journey made Escort Chen extremely dissatisfied. Chen Kai didn't say anything, but how could Xiao Jin not see the disdain and even a faint hostility in his eyes? He had seen this kind of look in Zen Master Ming Yu's eyes more than once. If I had known, I wouldn't have collected Qi Jin's silver. Xiao Jin was somewhat regretful. After listening to Qi Jin's explanation, he already understood that these mountain bandits couldn't have appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, they lived so freely at such a close distance to the border. If it weren't for the fact that they had nothing to do with the border guards of Jiasa country, Xiao Jin wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. As for Qi Jin's intention, Xiao Jin was even more aware. Qi Jin didn't necessarily want to rely on their martial strength. What he valued was Li Xinyu's respect for Xiao Hua. Qi Jin thought that since they were familiar with Li Xinyu and the others, when they encountered the mountain bandits ahead, they would definitely make the mountain bandits hesitate. As for this reason, Qi Jin couldn't tell Chen Kai or Xiao Jian directly. He could only use a probing tone to ask Xiao Jian and the others to protect them. Damn it, we're all smart people. After Xiao Jian felt regretful, he subconsciously looked at Xiao Hua. It was obvious that they couldn't have any relationship with the border guards. Li Xinyu's respect was for Xiao Hua and that piece of vitality stone. Facing the mountain bandits, not to mention himself, even Yuan Yao might not be able to protect himself. How could Xiao Jin dare to make a decision? Oh, Escort Chen, contrary to Xiao Jin's expectations, a trace of joy flashed across Xiao Hua's face. He asked, "Let this old man ask you, do you know the Lotus Escort Agency?" Lotus Escort Agency? A trace of vigilance flashed across Chen Kai's eyes. He asked curiously, Taoist knows the people of the escort agency? Tell this old man, do you know the Lotus Escort Agency? Hearing Chen Kai's answer, Xiao Hua's eyes flashed. He seemed to be somewhat ecstatic as he asked hurriedly. Chun Kai shivered. Xiao Hua's gaze was like lightning, as if it pierced into his heart, giving him a big fright. The dissatisfaction in his heart had long been thrown out of the highest clouds. He hurriedly replied, "Good, immortal elder knows. This one has never heard of the Lotus Escort Agency." Humph. Xiao Hua snorted coldly, appearing extremely dissatisfied. Immortal elder. Chun Kai's forehead was somewhat sweaty. Facing Xiao Hua's dissatisfaction, he felt an indescribable feeling of oppression and powerlessness. It was as if facing Xiao Hua was a huge mountain that could crush him into meat paste at any time. Now he truly knew how powerful Xiao Hua was. This one has heard of the Lotus Escort Agency, Swallow Escort Agency, Jinfeng Escort Agency, but I've never heard of the Lotus Escort Agency. What about the Misty sect? Xiao Hua knew that there wouldn't be any definite answer, but he still asked in a low voice. This one has also never heard of it. Sweat dripped down Chun Kai's face. His knees almost went soft. He really couldn't face Xiao Hua's incredulous gaze. This lowly one is just an ordinary escort. What immortal elder is talking about? This lowly one doesn't know. Who? Xiao Hua let out a long sigh. He sighed again in his heart. AI. Escort. Isn't this one's second brother an escort? Lotus Escort Agency. Misty sect. Why should this one make things difficult for an ordinary escort? Xiao Hua let out a breath. Chun Kai immediately felt that the danger that could easily crush him to death had suddenly disappeared. Only then did he involuntarily stretch out his hand and wipe the sweat off his forehead. His heart also relaxed as if a huge rock had been removed. Immortal elder. Qi Jin naturally saw Chun Kai's sorry state and was even more overjoyed in his heart. Seeing that Xiao Hua's expression was good, he hurriedly said in a low voice, "This old one is so bold as to ask Immortal Elder to come with us. We will properly serve Immortal Elder along the way." AI? Xiao Hua ignored Qi Jin and raised his head to look at the road outside the tea shed. His gaze was somewhat blurred, as if he saw the end of the road and also the end of time. It was when Qi Jin mentioned the escort agency and the escorts that those distant memories began to appear like fragments. Lotus Flower Escort Agency, Armed Escort Agency, escorts, and other unfamiliar terms appeared like a fountain. He couldn't help but have the urge to ask. He really wanted to get what he wanted from this escort called Chun Kai. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua was still disappointed. Perhaps they're not far away? Xiao Hua's heart was somewhat moved. The arena, the village, the escort agency, these are all things that Xiaoyu continent doesn't have. They're all from this one's memory, senior. Xiao Jin's voice was indistinct again, as if it came from the horizon and woke Xiao Hua up from his homesickness. We have to go either way. Why don't we go together? Up to you. Xiao Hua's face was as calm as water, and it was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. However, Xiao Jin already knew that Xiao Hua was somewhat unhappy, so he hurriedly said, "If Senior likes peace and quiet, we won't follow the caravan. There's no need." Xiao Hua waved his hand. "If we want to follow, then let's follow. It's good to be able to give them a helping hand." "Yes, Junior understands." Xiao Jin's mouth revealed a smile. He turned to Qi Jin and said, "Why aren't you thanking Daoist Xiao?" Yes, thank you Daoist Xiao. Thank you, Daoist Xiao." Qi Jin was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed. He then pulled Xiao Jin's sleeve and hurriedly left, as if he had something to say. Chun Kai couldn't stand Xiao Hua's imposing manner and also took the opportunity to slip away. Seeing that everyone had left, Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya and said, "Yuanya, why haven't you spoken these days? Have you had enough of this tea?" "Daoist, Junior doesn't know how to speak. I might as well not speak." Yuanya drank another cup of tea and placed the somewhat tattered teacup on the table. "Junior will go get a carriage." -11. Chapter 32-38. With that, Yuanya hurriedly got up and hurriedly walked out. Hee. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya's back and then looked at Lu Yi, who was sitting beside Yuanya and had closed his eyes to think after drinking a few mouthfuls of tea. Xiao Hua brought Lu Yi out of the tea shed. The carriages of Sun Hai Trading Company had already started to move. Qi Jin and Xiao Jian came out from behind a big tree. Both of them had a satisfied expression and seemed to be chatting happily. As for Chen Kai, he was already riding a horse in front of the carriages. Lu Yi. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the tea shed. The owner of the tea shed was lowering his head to clean the tables while secretly glancing at the carriages. He coldly snorted and turned to Lu Yi and asked, "Have you comprehended this cultivation technique?" "Yes, immortal elder knows." Hearing Xiao Hua's question, Lu Yi opened his eyes and revealed a complicated expression. "Under immortal elder's guidance, this little one has already comprehended it yesterday." "Ah? You already comprehended it yesterday? How many days has it been?" Xiao Hua was shocked. He looked at Lu Yi from top to bottom. After all, Xiao Hua was not a competent master and didn't know how to teach other people cultivation methods. Lu Yi was just an ordinary person and had never come into contact with Taoist cultivation methods before. Lu Yi was a little shy, but his eyes revealed a trace of pride. He whispered, "If it is as a mortal elder said, this little one has already comprehended it. Then, can you sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth?" Xiao Hua asked impatiently. Lu Yi shook his head regretfully. "This little one cannot sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that immortal elder spoke of. I don't know if this little one's comprehension is wrong or this little one does not have this kind of aptitude." And Xiao Hua nodded. "Get on the carriage. This old man wants to hear your comprehension." Yuanya watched Xiao Hua bring Lu Yi onto the carriage, and then the carriage became silent. Although he could see their mouths moving, he could not hear anything and knew that this was Xiao Hua's technique. He sighed slightly and drove the carriage to the back of the Sun Hai Trading Company. However, when he sighed, the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. This smile was somewhat mysterious. After about half a meal's worth of time, Xiao Hua, who was inside the carriage, sighed like Yuanya. He looked at Lu Yi and smiled bitterly. "Lu Yi, it's not that this old man is praising you, but your aptitude is incomparable. You have indeed thoroughly comprehended this cultivation technique, and there is no mistake about it. But even so, I'm afraid it's because your physique isn't good enough that you're unable to sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth." "Yes, Taoist priest, I understand." At this time, when Lu Yi heard Xiao Hua's praise, his eyes lit up. He smiled and said, "Taoist priest has already said this at the beginning. This little one has a plan in mind. This lowly one is already fortunate enough to have a glimpse of the immortal cultivation technique. As for whether or not I have the fate to cultivate, this lowly one doesn't care anymore." "Yes, it's great that you have such intentions. I'm just afraid that you're too ambitious." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Since that's the case, this old man will teach you another cultivation technique. You can try it again." "Yes, I'll listen to Taoist priest's instructions." Lu Yi nodded vigorously. After Xiao Hua passed on a simple water-type cultivation method to Lu Yi, he once again irresponsibly gave him a few small dates, allowing Lu Yi to comprehend it himself. Xiao Hua himself once again exited the carriage, riding on the back of a horse, leisurely and contentedly admiring the scenery outside the main road. "Brother Ya." After Xiao Hua left, Lu Yi closed his eyes for a long time. After carefully memorizing the cultivation technique, he walked to the front of the carriage and sat down cross-legged. He whispered, "You've worked hard these past few days." "Hee, it's not hard at all." When Yuanya heard this, he didn't turn his head. He shook the reins and stabilized the horse pulling the carriage. He said, "Now that you have an opportunity, you must properly grasp it. The immortal is a good person. It's our great fortune to have met him. He won't be able to stay with us for too long. You must cultivate well and strive to have the immortal accept you as his disciple and take you away." "AI, it's easier said than done. It's too difficult." Lu Yi sighed. "Since I was young, I boasted that I was smart and had a photographic memory. But look at the hundreds of words the immortal gave me." Sure. Yuanya, who didn't know much about the ways of the world, was suddenly shocked and hurriedly said, "Brother Lu, you can't say this anymore. Only you know it." "Yes, I understand." Lu Yi hurriedly smiled. "Taoist priest only said that I can't pass it to others. He didn't say that I can't nag." If the immortal says one, you must think two. Yuanya wanted to say something, but looking at Louis, he didn't know how to express it. In short, you know this better than me. It's better not to make the immortal angry. Yes, I will remember. Louis looked at Yuanya, who didn't speak much, and his heart warmed. He handed the spirit dates in his hand to Yuanya and said, "This is the date given by the immortal. I haven't eaten it yet. Try it." Okay. Yuanya didn't hesitate. He reached out and took it. He threw it into the air and was about to use his mouth to catch it. If you don't want to die, then don't eat it like this. Xiaohua's voice drifted over. The thumb-sized spirit jujube stopped in mid-air. Yuanya raised his head and waited foolishly. At this moment, the carriage suddenly sped up. Yuanya's body involuntarily fell down on the carriage. With a pada sound, the spirit jujube fell down and hit Yuanya's nose. Gidge. A burst of laughter suddenly sounded, like a string of silver bells swaying to the left of Yuanya. A red pony happily ran past Yuanya. Not only was the pony's mane fine and smooth, but there were also strands of light coming from the saddle and other things on the pony's back. There were also traces of red mist coming from where the pony's hooves touched the ground. It was as if the pony didn't touch the ground at all, and it didn't make the slightest sound. Looking at the little red horse, there was a woman dressed in red. Her face was covered with a layer of red veil. Although her figure was graceful, her face couldn't be seen clearly. The laughter came from the woman's veil. As the woman laughed, the little red horse galloped past Yuanya's carriage, and a faint fragrance wafted through the wind. Dia Wu. Yuanya was originally lying on his back, but when he heard the laughter, it was as if he had seen a ghost. His face suddenly turned pale, and he used all his strength to push his arms back. His entire body flew out of the carriage as he screamed in disbelief. Gidge. Gidge. The silver bells continued to ring, but they were getting further and further away. The little red horse was very handsome. In a short moment, it had already caught up to the front of the Sunhai Trading Company. Dia Wu. Yuanya groaned. Before he even landed, he stepped on the horse pulling the carriage and wanted to chase after Di Fui. "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" A rough voice came from behind, followed by the rumbling of horse hooves. The entire avenue was shaking. Everyone looked up and saw a cloud of dust rising from the bridge that they had just stepped off. A group of cavalrymen wearing pitch-black armor and riding pitch-black horses were chasing after them with long spears in their hands. Although this group of soldiers was quite far from the woman in red, everyone, including Xiaohua, thought that this group of soldiers was the woman's bodyguard. The soldiers were in a line of 3, almost occupying the entire road. Under the rough shouts, the workers and bodyguards of the Sunhai Trading Company hurriedly moved the carriages to the side, trying their best to make way for the soldiers. As for Yuanya, he had already landed on the second carriage in front of him. However, the soldiers in front of the group of soldiers had already raised their spears. Hidden behind their helmets, their gazes were like sharp swords as they stared at Yuanya. "Yuanya, come down," Xiaohua said indifferently. "You won't be able to catch up." But Yuanya stood on the roof of the carriage. His face was filled with an indescribable excitement and reluctance. In the distance, at the end of the road, the woman's figure was like a burning cloud. Yuanya knew that. He really wouldn't be able to catch up. Hurry. Hurry up and come down." Seeing the dozens of soldiers in black armor turn their heads to look at Yuanya, the spears in their hands were raised. If Yuanya made any strange movements, these spears would not hesitate to stab at him. Xiao Jian hurriedly shouted, "This? I don't know which country's black armor army this is." Yes. Yuanya looked into the distance with some unwillingness before looking to the left and right. Only then did he jump down from the carriage. Rumble. The black armor army quickly galloped past under everyone's gaze. There were more than 100 of them, and their movements were uniform. Even the hooves of the 100 black horses were almost the same. When the black armor army was far away, the workers of the Sunhai Trading Company urged the carriages to move again. The dozens of carriages slowly moved again, leaving Yuanya standing on the side of the road in a daze as he lightly bit his lips. "Yeah?" Xiao Jian asked curiously. -11. Chapter 32-39. N. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat as he recalled the first time he saw Fairy Hongxia. Didn't the red mole at the corner of Fairy Hongxia's mouth give him a familiar feeling? Xiaohua nodded slightly. Diawu is pretty good looking, Xiaohua said softly as he looked at Yuan Ye's dazed expression. Furthermore, this old man has already left a mark on her body. As long as it's within 100 li, this old man will definitely be able to detect it. Really? Yuan Ye's eyes were filled with ecstasy as he clenched his fists tightly. His arms were trembling. Hee. Xiaohua laughed but did not reply. Ha ha ha. Yuan Ye jumped up and somersaulted a few times in the air before landing on the ground. He was clearly extremely happy. Looking at Yuan Ye's appearance, Xiaohua rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. Damn it, it's good to be young. No, this old man can't take advantage of his seniority in the future. There's no reason for me to be so lifeless. It's really boring. Yes, wasn't Xiaohua the same as he was in the past? However, after coming out of seclusion for 100 years, he felt that he was old for no reason. He kept calling himself this old man. It really felt like he was past his prime. This Xiao is just over 200 years old. If I reach nascent soul, my lifespan can reach 2,000 years. Compared to an ordinary person, I'm only around 10 years old. Damn it, this Xiao is still underage. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. Senior? Xiao Jian looked at Xiaohua strangely. This senior had beaten Xiaohua from the peak to the bottom of the valley in an instant. It's nothing. Xiaohua's face immediately became as cold as ice. Then, he raised his eyebrows and unhappily looked towards the horizon 100 zhang away. There were a few pigeon-like birds that were quickly flying past. Humph! Xiaohua snorted coldly. Those birds suddenly fell down and fainted when they landed on the mountain rocks. As the saying goes, snakes and rats are in the same nest. It's really like that. Xiaohua's gaze turned and looked at the tea shed in the distance. Brother Ye. Seeing Yuan Ye happily land on the carriage, Lu Yi was also happy for him. He carefully handed the spirit jujube that had fallen on the carriage to him. You're really amazing. You've already decided on a marriage at the age of 3. I really envy you. Slap. Yuan Ye raised his hand and slapped the back of Lu Yi's head. He scolded. How am I as despicable as you think? I was only 7 or 8 years old at that time. Tell me, what is going on? Just as Yuan Ye finished speaking, another person appeared out of thin air. That person's voice was extremely wretched. Old. Yuan Ye was furious. Just as he was about to scold him, he saw who it was and immediately smiled apologetically. Immortal elder, you? Why are you here? Tell me. Xiaohua said with a smile. I've heard you play the sun in the River Tide Temple. At that time, I didn't see Diawu, but now, this old man knows what Diawu looks like. If you don't tell me, hee. Yuan Ye helplessly looked at Xiaohua's disrespectful appearance. He then looked at Xiao Jian, who was riding a horse and pretending not to care. However, his ears were already perked up. Yuan Ye could only drive the carriage and tell the story of what happened. Yuan Ye had lived in the mystic jade dark forest since he was young. He danced with the wild wolves in the forest. When he was 5 years old, the black wolf that raised him was bitten and seriously injured when it was fighting for territory with another wolf. The night the black wolf died, Yuan Ye took the black wolf's corpse into the depths of the wolf valley. He wanted to bury the black wolf. However, on that full moon night, Yuan Ye heard the faint cry of a baby. This was the first time Yuan Ye had seen a human baby. It was the first time he had seen a human like himself. Therefore, after burying the black wolf's corpse, he brought the baby back to the wolf's den. However, the arrival of the baby attracted the attention of the pack of wolves. Perhaps because they no longer had the black wolf's protection, the pack of wolves wanted to chase Yuan Ye away. Thus, a fight broke out between Yuan Ye and the pack of wolves again. The 5-year-old Yuan Ye was naturally no match for the pack of wolves. After being bitten and covered in cuts and bruises, he carried the baby, whose left arm was also injured, out of the wolf's den. At that time, the baby should have just been born. It cried loudly and had a high fever after being attacked by the pack of wolves. Yuan Ye naturally did not understand this. He only thought that the baby was hungry, so he caught rabbits and roasted them for the baby to eat. How could a newborn baby eat these things? Just as Yuanya was helpless and the baby was on the verge of death, a group of colorful butterflies fluttered their enchanting wings in the morning light and flew past Yuanya and the baby. The baby seemed to be attracted by the colorful butterflies. Perhaps it had run out of strength and stopped crying hysterically. This made Yuanya very happy. Ignoring the cuts and bruises all over his body, he carried the baby and followed the butterflies to the side of a lake. At the side of the lake, there was a doe that had just given birth. It was mournfully licking the dead baby. It was in so much pain that it wished to die. Looking at the lifeless baby and the milk dripping from the doe's mouth, Yuanya suddenly understood something. He quickly caught the doe and used its milk to feed the baby. After eating its fill, the baby fell asleep and slept for half a day. After half a day, it cried loudly and ate the milk again. After a few days like this, the baby's fever subsided and the wounds on its left arm healed. However, the wolfsbane had left a long scar on the baby's arm. Other than a small blanket and a sun, the baby had nothing else. Yuanya himself did not have a name, but he gave the baby the name Diawu. Just like this, Yuanya, Diawu, and the doe that had lost its baby lived by the side of the butterfly pond. Diawu gradually grew up, from swaddling clothes to learning to walk, and then to babbling. They lived there for 3 years. During these 3 years, Yuanya would go hunting during the day and Diawu would stay with the doe. At night, Yuanya would accompany Diawu and play the sun for her. Every time he played the sun, Diawu would obediently lie in Yuanya's arms and look at him with sparkling eyes that were like the stars in the sky. These happy days lasted until one day. Yuanya remembered it very clearly. It was a stormy day. Yuanya woke up early to hunt as usual, but before he could catch any prey, he suddenly felt uneasy. It was as if they had a telepathic connection. Yuanya hurriedly ran back to Butterfly Lake. As expected, the side of Butterfly Lake was covered in blood. The doe had been killed on the ground, and there were light footprints beside it. Yuanya angrily followed the footprints out of Butterfly Lake. Unfortunately, under the heavy rain, Yuanya quickly lost track of the enemy. Helpless, Yuanya left Butterfly Lake and searched the entire mystic jade dark forest to find Diawu. Unfortunately, Yuanya had underestimated the mystic jade dark forest. He had spent 5 years and had not even explored half of the forest. The remaining areas were filled with fierce beasts that Yuanya could not deal with. Yuanya had gathered his courage and tried to deal with a fierce beast that he thought he could handle. However, he was heavily injured by the fierce beast and was captured by a hunter who had entered the mystic jade dark forest. After that, Yuanya was taken out of the mystic jade dark forest and sold to the arena. Speaking of the arena, Yuanya seemed to be touched by something sad. His face revealed a sorrowful expression as he raised his hand and placed the spirit jujube in his mouth. Just as he was about to fiercely chew on it to relieve the dryness in his mouth, Xiao Hua's interested voice sounded out again. Hey, what an unforgettable love between childhood sweethearts. This old man advises you to eat it bit by bit. Otherwise, you will never see your Diawu again. Xiao Hua's words were naturally not as fast as Yuanya's actions. However, before Yuanya heard Xiao Hua's words, he seemed to have lost all his strength. No matter how hard he tried, he could not bite down. Only after Xiao Hua finished speaking did he regain consciousness. Hee. Yuanya laughed embarrassedly and lightly bit down on a piece of spirit jujube. In an instant, his mouth was filled with a sweet fragrance. This sweet fragrance was something that Yuanya, who had lived in the forest since young, had never tasted before. When he greedily chewed up the spirit jujube and swallowed it into his stomach, an indescribable warmth rushed into his 5 viscera and 6 bowels. A comfortable feeling spread through his limbs and bones. Yuanya could not help but moan. He licked his lips, wanting to take another bite. However, he was extremely reluctant. Seeing that Yuanya was about to hide the spirit jujube in his bosom like a meat bun, Xiao Hua laughed. No need to be so stingy. This old man has a lot of these things. If you want to eat some, you can ask this old man any time. As he spoke, he took out 2 more spirit jujubes and threw them to Yuanya. Yuanya stretched out his hands and very nimbly caught them, immediately keeping them in his bosom. Ai, how pitiful. Xiaohua stood up and stood on the carriage. He sighed. Yuanya, you and Diawu. Perhaps it was the enmity from your previous life. If you don't owe her, then she owes you. However, the heavens threw the two of you together at such a young age. TSK, now? You know her, but how could she know you? Moreover, she is now a descendant of some royal family. What about you? Such unrealistic thoughts should be put aside for now. At this point, Xiaohua suddenly froze. He looked at Lu Yi, who was eating a spirit jujube with his eyes closed. Although Yuanya and Diawu's story sounded a little absurd, wasn't it similar to Lu Yi and Xiaoyun's experience? One was a wild boy who grew up in the forest, the other was a descendant of a royal family. One was a shrew in the marketplace, the other was a princess of the water tribe. A mortal elder. Yuanya's face was slightly red. He smiled and said, "You're thinking too much. Diawu is a family member to this junior. Moreover, she is his first family member. This junior is very concerned about her life and death. Since she is living well, this junior can rest assured. Whether she knows this junior or not, whether she sees this junior or not, it doesn't matter." Ai, what an ill-fated relationship. Not far away, Xiao Jin's ears drooped. He sighed and did not say anything else, as if he was warning Yuanya. Taoist elder. Just as Xiaohua was about to say something, Louis suddenly opened his eyes in surprise and shouted, This junior knows what spiritual energy is. -11. Chapter 32:40. A strange expression appeared on Xiaohua's face. He didn't dare to give Louis too many spirit fruits and only gave him the lowest grade spirit jujube. Firstly, it was to let him eat until he was full. Secondly, it was to let him experience the spiritual items of Taoism. Xiaohua didn't place too much hope on the spirit jujube. However, Xiaohua still underestimated the spirit jujube in his space and also underestimated Lu Yi's aptitude. Just this one spirit jujube was enough for Lu Yi to grasp the spirit jujube as a small foot. And you should first experience it and don't do anything else. Xiaohua thought for a moment and instructed, My Taoism's divine abilities all rely on the spirit jujube of heaven and earth. If you can't experience the spirit jujube of heaven and earth just relying on these spirit fruits, it's impossible for you to step onto the path of Tao. Yes, this little one understands. Louis was very happy. He took another bite of the spirit jujube and closed his eyes to experience it. Looking at Lu Yi's excited appearance, Xiaohua inwardly sighed. Lu Yi's aptitude was indeed not bad. Not only was he able to comprehend a qi refining cultivation method that he had never cultivated before, he was also able to keenly sense the faint spiritual energy within the spirit jujube. This was absolutely impossible for the previous Xiaohua. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was even more clear that if Lu Yi couldn't sense the spirit jujube of heaven and earth, it would be impossible for him to step onto the threshold of cultivation. Without the spirit jujube of heaven and earth, all of Taoism's cultivation was just a castle in the air. After entering Jiasa country, other than encountering the black armored army led by Diawu at the bridge, there were no other unforeseen events. The caravan of Sun Hai Trading Company moved forward in an extremely orderly manner. When night came, someone led them to a spacious mountain ridge to rest. The caravan was prepared. Not long after, Qi Jin led two people and brought some food to Xiaohua and the others. What made Xiao Jin depressed was that other than his own stomach being hungry, Lu Yi and Yuanya didn't feel hungry or thirsty at all. They didn't even drink a mouthful of water. Compared to Xiao Jin's depression, Qi Jin was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Otherworldly, ah. What does this mean? This means that the immortal in front of me is really an immortal, ah. As for the Taoist priest who took his silver coins, he was just like him, a layman. After Qi Jin left, Xiao Jin gnawed on a stewed pig trotter. Although the pig trotter was very fragrant, Xiao Jin's eyes were filled with hidden bitterness as he looked at Xiaohua, who was cultivating with his eyes closed. His mouth was tasteless. Xiaohua ignored him and seemed to have fallen asleep. After the meal, a bonfire was lit in the middle of the group of carriages. The escorts and some of the workers from the trading companies took out food and wine, and even gambling equipment. They started to make a ruckus. Seeing this lively scene, the eyes of Xiao Jian, who had been silent all this time and felt somewhat out of place with Xiao Hua, suddenly lit up. He glanced at Xiao Hua from the corner of his eyes and quietly walked over. However, he had only taken a few steps when Yuanya hurriedly got up and followed him out. When they reached the shadow of a carriage, Yuanya hurriedly caught up with Xiao Jian and said in a low voice, "Master, for you?" "What?" Xiao Jian was stunned. When he saw Yuanya carefully take out a spirit jujube wrapped in an oil bag from his bosom, his face turned cold. "Pa." He slapped the oil bag away and said, "This old man doesn't need the pity of others. This old man has eaten a lot of these spirit fruits in the past." After he finished speaking, he ignored Yuanya and quickly walked away. The embers of the bonfire gradually extinguished in the night wind. Xiao Jian happily walked back while humming a tune. He lay down near the carriage and quickly fell asleep. In the night, Xiao Hua opened his eyes and indifferently swept a glance at everything that was somewhat messy. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of ridicule. The Taoist divine sense was actually used by Xiao Jian in gambling. I'm afraid that if the Tao sovereign above the ninth heaven knew, he would fly down in anger to punish Xiao Jian, right? On the second and third days, they didn't encounter the bandits that Qi Jin was worried about. Everything was normal. Moreover, there were more carriages on the road. Not only were there bodyguards from the Sun Hai Trading Company, there were also bodyguards from other trading companies. It seemed that even if bandits came out, there was no need for Xiao Hua and the others to make a move. These bodyguards could handle it. Qi Jin and the other managers of the trading company were happy, but on the other hand, Xiao Jian couldn't be happy. His divine sense was originally weak. On the first day, it was exhausted. This divine sense won him a lot of money. However, on the second and third day, there were more bodyguards participating in the gambling. Xiao Jian no longer had any means to cheat. He didn't know if it was because of bad luck or other reasons, but Xiao Jian lost again and again. At the beginning, Xiao Jian wanted to withdraw in time. Unfortunately, he won too much on the first day. How could the bodyguards who lost money let him go? After he lost all the money he had won in the past to others, even with Qi Jin's reminder, the red-eyed Xiao Jian simply couldn't listen. He even said that he would get angry with anyone who didn't allow him to gamble. This kind of gambling behavior was the favorite of all gamblers. The gambling continued until dawn. Under the morning light, Xiao Jian walked to the front of the carriage, somewhat tired. In the distant shadows, a group of bodyguards and some shop assistants who participated in the gambling secretly poked their heads out. They were afraid of the otherworldly Xiao Hua, and even more afraid of Yuanya, who was more ferocious than a beast. However, they couldn't let go of the vitality stones that Xiao Jian lost to them. Losing a game wasn't scary. What was scary was, the more you bet, the more you lose, and the more you lose, the more you gamble. On the third night, no one came to wake Xiao Jian up. However, as he looked at the bustling scene around the bonfire and heard the bets being placed, Xiao Jian felt as if there was a pair of small hands clutching at his heart, making it impossible for him to fall asleep and calm his heart. Finally, Xiao Jian resolutely walked to the side of the bonfire. Looking at Xiao Jian's long shadow in the bonfire, Xiao Hua seemed to have understood something. Xiao Hua felt that he understood, but in reality, what he understood was still too little. When the moon was high in the sky, Xiao Jian came back and took away the last portion of the vitality stones. However, Xiao Jian didn't come back to rest. He followed his own vitality stones to the bonfire. This time, Xiao Jian didn't stay for long. Soon, the bonfire was abnormally noisy. Xiao Jian staggered back. Although the darkness of the night was a very good layer of protection, Xiao Hua could clearly see that Xiao Jian's face was bruised and swollen. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, he already understood everything. Xiao Jian actually began to cheat after losing all his primeval stones. If you want to cheat, you can cheat, but you were discovered by others. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua and Yuanya behind Xiao Jian, this guy would have been beaten to a pulp by a group of bodyguards. Perhaps one could see true feelings in difficult days, but one's true nature would never be seen. Perhaps only when one was comfortable and relaxed could one see one's true nature. How many loving couples could help each other when they were in poverty, but when they were rich, they couldn't help each other? This was what people often said, being able to share hardships but not happiness. When Xiao Jian didn't have money, he could bring Yuanya along. No matter if it was divination or running a training hall, he was able to keep his loneliness. However, when he was comfortable and his life was secure, the bad side in his heart immediately revealed itself. No matter how much he pretended, it couldn't hide it. The morning wind blew, blowing away the darkness of the night. Everyone stood up in high spirits, their faces filled with smiles as they faced a new day. That's right. How could a few boxes full of vitality stones be compared to ordinary gold and silver? But it was Xiao Jian who lost it all. Everyone who received vitality stones was abnormally happy. This was something that they couldn't even dream of. Even if they went home now, in this lifetime, no, several lifetimes, they wouldn't be short of money. This world was like this. There was only so much happiness. If you were happy, others wouldn't be happy. If you weren't happy, others would take away your happiness. Xiao Jian was like this. Others completely robbed him of his happiness, leaving him with only bitterness. Other than frowning, he was listless. Yesterday at dusk, he still had wealth comparable to a rich man. Today at dawn, he had become a pauper, with nothing left. However, contrary to the expectations of Xiao Hua, who was coldly watching from the side, after the carriages had left for half an hour, the dejection on Xiao Jian's face had already disappeared. It was as if he didn't go to the bonfire gambling house, and even more so, as if he didn't receive any vitality stones at all. How interesting. Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Jian, who was in a good mood. He really didn't understand. He was very clear about the value of those spirit stones. If he lost those spirit stones, Xiao Hua would definitely not forgive himself and would definitely be heartbroken. Oh, there are interesting things every year, but it seems like there are a lot of them this year. Xiao Hua's gaze had just moved away from Xiao Jian and immediately looked at a few tall mountains in the distance. Those tall mountains surrounded the main road, and it was unknown when the main road under their feet started to narrow. The weeds on the side of the road were also lush. It was as if it was a barren place. Perhaps the huge gambling house from before made these escorts' sense of smell become dull. Only when they saw the tall mountains did they become alert, and immediately sent a few escorts to rush into the mountains to investigate. Including the carriages that joined the carriages later, there were already dozens of carriages in the Sunhai Trading Company. There were also close to 40 escorts from different escort companies. They waited for a moment, but still didn't see any signal, and couldn't help but feel anxious. At this moment, Qi Jin came again. The pitiful Qi Jin was now knocked out by Xiao Jian's vitality stones. Those were immortal stones. Qi Jin, who had traveled extensively, had long heard of it. His own home also had a lot of immortal stones, but seeing Xiao Jian lose more immortal stones than he had collected in his lifetime, he really didn't dare to put Xiao Jian, who had taken his money, together with the current Xiao Jian. He had already regarded Xiao Jian as an otherworldly expert. Even though this expert had been beaten up by many escorts, he only regarded this otherworldly expert as someone who was playing in the mortal world. Seeing Xiao Jian impatiently waving his hand, and then looking at Xiao Hua, who was sitting cross-legged on a horse with his eyes closed, Qi Jin confidently returned to the carriages. At this moment, the escorts who entered the mountains also sent a signal that it was safe. -11. Chapter 32:41. Dozens of carriages started moving again. Although the escorts were nervous, they still urged their horses forward. This was the only way to enter the capital of the Jiasa kingdom. Beyond these mountains was a sprawling forest filled with wild beasts. There was no way to go. The only thing they prayed for was that the mountain bandits would not come down the mountain to rob them. They were either drunk, had robbed enough, or had seen that there were enough escorts in their carriages. Unfortunately, these escorts' luck had already been used up a few days ago when they gambled with Xiao Jian. They had only been on the mountain path for about 2 hours when their extreme joy turned to sorrow. After a series of loud gongs, hundreds of bandits dressed in different outfits swarmed out from the side of the mountain ridge where the carriages were located, surrounding the carriages like dumplings. Even if the group of escorts wanted to escape, there was no way for them to do so. Ha ha ha. While everyone's expression changed, Xiao Jian was covering his mouth and laughing. That's right, he had nothing on him now. His primordial stones had long been used up. He was the only one who wasn't afraid of the mountain bandits. Nay, a loud roar came from the front left of the carriages. A yellow horse turned out from the mountain ridge. The man on the horse was 20 feet tall. He held a long saber in his hand and shouted, "This road is opened by me." Then, there was another loud roar that was even louder than before. A bull-like mount came out from the back of the carriage. There was also a valiant person sitting on it, and he shouted with a ferocious face, "This tree was planted by me." Soon after, the man stopped talking again. Only some of the bandits on the left were beating their gongs with all their might. When the sound of the gongs faded away, 2 more burly bandits appeared from the front and the right of the caravan. They shouted, "If you want to pass through here, you have to pay the toll." That was the best song of all time. Strange, what's going on? Xiaohua was puzzled. He looked around and asked in a low voice, "Daoist?" The quick-witted Louis had already opened his eyes. He wasn't nervous at all. He smiled and said, "These 4 mountain bandits belong to 4 different strongholds." They said 4 sentences at the same time, which means that the 4 of them will attack together today. I think they found out about the bet a few days ago and attracted the attention of the 4 strongholds at the same time. Normally, they would take turns and only come out when it's the turn of the village. Well, that's the only way. Xiaohua came to a realization. He had clearly killed all the birds that were sending messages, and he hadn't seen any suspicious birds flying over these past few days. How could these bandits know the exact amount of treasures in these carriages? Perhaps this was the only explanation. However, what Xiaohua didn't know was that although he was cautious, he still made a mistake. Among the information that the birds brought, in addition to the information about the trading company, there was also information about Xiaohua and the others' Taoist identities, and also a warning to the bandits not to make a move. However, since Xiaohua had killed these birds, the mountain bandits naturally wouldn't be able to find out about the warning. Naturally, they would come out to intercept him, especially with the existence of Xiao Jian, the Taoist master. Even if these bandits knew about this, would they let go of this great opportunity to make a fortune? Since Louis knew about it, the other escorts would also know about it. Some of the escorts had already urged their horses forward to collude with the bandits. Xiaohua put away his doubts and released his divine sense. He watched with interest as the righteous and evil sides discussed over there. This familiar scene made him believe even more firmly that his original home was in the hidden immortal continent. He was being chased by 2 nascent soul experts, but unexpectedly, he profited from a disaster and returned to his homeland. The collusion only lasted for a short moment before both sides broke down. It wasn't that the bandits wanted too much, it was that the escorts and the trading company wanted to give too little. Immediately, the sounds of fighting rang out. Under the escort of the escorts, the workers of the carriages risked their lives to break out of the encirclement. The bandits from all directions also raised their weapons and charged forward. When both sides came into contact, casualties immediately appeared. Although there were many bandits, the majority of them weren't skilled in martial arts. Although there were few escorts, they were all experts. Most of the miserable screams came from the mouths of the bandits. The escorts were rarely injured. Just like this, the carriages once again charged forward for a distance of several dozen zhang. Xiaohua and the others were also very depressed. At first, Yuanya followed behind the carriages. Later, the bandits chased from behind. When Yuanya prepared to meet the enemy, those bandits actually let go of the worn-out carriages in the carriages. They didn't even look at Xiaohua and the others. They directly passed by and challenged the escorts guarding the carriages. Xiaohua looked at these ant-like bandits and didn't know how to deal with them. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Although he could casually attack and these several hundred bandits wouldn't be able to leave their lives behind, could he do it? Could he make the lightning from the 9 heavens fall on the heads of these bandits who didn't have any magic power? Even if these bandits' steel blades were once stained with blood. Immortal Elder. Immortal Elder. In the distance, a faint shout sounded. When it entered Xiaohua's ears, It was Qi Jin's cry for help. Xiao Hua glanced at Xiao Jian, who seemed to be rejoicing in other people's misfortune, and didn't seem to have any reaction to this cry for help. Xiao Hua instructed Yuanya, "Go. Help Elder Qi." Yes, Yuanya had long wanted to move. Now that he heard Xiao Hua, he immediately jumped up from the carriage. "Take the weapon." Xiao Hua waved his hand and threw the magic wand to Yuanya. With the magic wand in his hand, Yuanya was like a tiger with wings. He leaped into the air among the bandits. Every shadow of the wand would break the bones of the bandits. He was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. He was invincible and was about to reach Qi Jin. "You brat." At this time, on the mountain ridge to the right of the carriage, a fat monk holding a crescent moon spade roared. He urged his donkey-like mount to rush down the mountain ridge. The monk's chest was bare. His 2-inch-long black hair danced in the mountain wind. When he waved the crescent moon spade, it made a woo-woo sound like a ghost's cry. The donkey was even more strange. When it wagged its tail, it was actually twice as fast as a horse. It rushed down the mountain ridge as if it was flat ground. In a few breaths, it had already arrived in front of Yuanya. "Have a taste of my staff." The fat monk roared again. With a woo sound, the crescent moon spade smashed down with earth-shattering force. Clang. Yuanya did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly waved his magic wand to meet the attack. With a deafening sound, the fat monk and the donkey were stopped and almost moved back half a foot. Yuanya was shaken off the mountain path. His whole body somersaulted a few times in the air, but he could not dissipate the huge force. After landing on the ground, he was pushed back several feet before he could stabilize himself. Looking at the area between Yuanya's thumb and index finger, there was a faint trace of blood. The area between his thumb and index finger was actually split by this attack. Awesome! Yuanya's eyes flashed with a fanatical expression. His legs moved, and with a trembling hand, he waved the magic wand and rushed toward the fat monk. Ha ha ha! The fat monk also laughed and urged the donkey to fight with Yuanya. The fat monk was also very good. The crescent moon spade flew up and down. It was a match for Yuanya. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was no clear winner. However, Xiao Hua could see that Yuanya did not have many moves, but each of his moves was dangerous, forcing the fat monk to be tired. Coupled with the weight of the magic wand, Yuanya gradually gained the upper hand. Although the fat monk's moves were very tight, his strength was slightly inferior to Yuanya's. He also did not have Yuanya's fearless fierceness. Soon, he was at a disadvantage. He might be fine for now, but after a long time, he would definitely be defeated. Haha, fake monk. You also have a day like this. The fierce man who had been standing at the back of the caravan on his bull-like mount laughed loudly. He raised the steel spear in his hand and shouted, "Second brother G, if you don't help me, that cheap sister of yours will be a widow." The fat monk was finally able to catch his breath under the shadow of Yuanya's staff and shouted loudly. Just as the fat monk finished speaking woo, the sound of a staff whistling interrupted the fat monk's shout. "This old man is coming." The fierce man called Second Brother G urged the old bull under him. The bull's hooves actually emitted a faint smoke, and it rushed toward Yuanya. "Humph!" Xiao Hua sneered. Just as he was about to make a move, he heard the sound of hurried horse hooves in the distance. A clear and slightly childish voice sounded. "Bold mountain bandit, you actually dare to do such a wicked thing in broad daylight. Eat my sword." Not only was Xiao Hua shocked, even Second Brother G, who was about to attack Yuanya, turned around to look. Dozens of feet away, there was a large green horse. On the horse, there was a scholar who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. This scholar was wearing a green scholar's robe. His thin lips were tightly shut, and he held a 3-foot-long green sword in his hand. Under his sword-like eyebrows, his bright eyes flashed with hatred. Although the green horse's back was as bumpy as waves, the scholar stood steadily on the horse's back. When he got a little closer, the scholar's figure jumped from the horse's back. Using the horse's momentum, he rushed into the air and pierced towards Second Brother G like a wild goose. "Still wet behind the ears, little brat." You don't even dare to tell me your name, and you actually dare to be so serious with your grandfather. Second brother G saw that the sword light was like a star, sweeping through the air and piercing toward him. He couldn't help but sneer. Pointing his spear in the air, he roared and turned around to meet the scholar flying toward him. Clang, clang, clang. The scholar's robe fluttered in the air. The sword light was like a floating frost, and the steel spear was like a horned plum blossom in the flying frost. The moment the scholar and the bandit met face to face, they immediately exchanged several moves. The scholar's figure was forced to dodge in the air by the bandit. After borrowing the force of the attack several times, he finally had no choice but to land on the side of the mountain ridge. Where did this scholar come from? Second brother G seemed to be somewhat afraid of this scholar. He shook the steel spear in his hand and coldly said, "Which academy are you from? You have no business here, so you should leave early. You are not my opponent." Ha ha ha, in broad daylight. When is there a place in the hidden, immortal continent where a thief can teach a scholar a lesson? The scholar waved his green sword, and a green light flashed. He coldly looked at second brother G and loudly said, "I am not willing to tell you my name because you thieves don't deserve to hear my name. If you hear my name, it will be an insult to me for no reason." -11.